Chapter 288. In the air, a melodious song was lingering. From the song that lingered in the air, Noah sensed a magic that could not be ignored. It made him straighten his body that was still in a relaxed state. His eyes that were hidden under the hat of his black coat also became sharp. However, when Noah saw the full appearance of the person who came, his sharp eyes immediately froze and were filled with surprise. Sha sha. Amidst the clear sound of footsteps, the one who walked out from the shadows of the trees and into the bright moonlight was a petite and delicate girl. Looking at the girl who was slowly revealing her appearance under the moonlight, even Noah could not help but hold his breath. Because the girl under the moonlight was too beautiful. It was an existence that could make people think of a doll. Her slender limbs were so weak that it seemed like they could be broken with a little force. Her skin that was exposed under the moonlight was pale and lifeless. The girl had shoulder-length black hair that was darker than the night. She was wearing the same black fur coat. She was wearing a black snow hat on her head. She was wearing snow boots. Even her hands were wearing pitch-black gloves. She was like a witch that was born from the night. Her entire body was filled with a magical charm. What left the deepest impression was not only the girl's delicate doll-like face and figure, but also those eyes that seemed to have shed all emotions, shielding herself from the world, as if she had completely transcended the mortal world. That pair of eyes were equally dark and deep, without any emotion in them. However, under the moonlight, the girl who was like a doll and a witch was still so beautiful that it was suffocating. If it was someone else, even if they were a woman like the girl, they would definitely be stunned. Unfortunately, Noah had seen Lasana's playfulness and cuteness, Myra's rude and unreasonable personality, the Son of Heaven's dignity and holiness, Lilith's arrogance and confidence, and Julie's slender beauty that was like a doll in front of him. This allowed Noah to successfully break free from the suffocating beauty. However, Noah was still surprised. The person who came was not Aoko Aozaki? Could it be that Aoko Aozaki was not the manager of Sanyo City's spirit vein? At this moment, the young lady came to a halt and stared at Noah with emotionless eyes. His gaze was as if he was looking at a large moving object. In the next second, a clear voice that was almost the same as the voice that was fluctuating in the air sounded from the girl's mouth. "We don't accept uninvited guests." The voice was 1,000 miles away. It should not only be because the girl saw Noah as an intruder, but also because the girl herself was synonymous with indifference. Noah glanced vaguely at the dark-skinned, delicate girl. He purposely spoke in a hoarse voice, pretending to be a middle-aged man. "So, little girl, you want to use your rights as the master to drive me away?" The dark-skinned girl raised her eyes slightly. After staring at Noah for a while, she spoke in a voice that was so calm that it was strange. "If you want to stay and play." As the words fell, the black clothes on the girl's body moved as if there was no wind, slowly swaying up and down. At this moment, a power that caused the cold flow in the forest and the low temperature in the air to stagnate gushed out from the girl's body, like a burning gas, rising from the girl's body. As if even the moon was trembling, the bright moon in the sky hid in the dark clouds, converging the moonlight, turning the entire forest into a world of darkness. Even so, the girl's dark eyes still flashed in the night, and her slender body rolled with a power that could make gorillas and black bears, who were many times bigger than the girl, flee in panic. That was the magic that belonged to the girl. It was also the girl's warning. "I want to drink a cup of warm black tea before going to sleep." The dark girl closed her eyes and made a final declaration. "In order to have that kind of time, I don't want to play the game for too long. Can you leave by yourself?" Noah narrowed his eyes as he sensed the magic and hostility rising from the pitch-black young lady. In the end, he uttered those words. "I also don't want to play games with a little girl." The dark girl was silent for a moment, and when her voice sounded again, it contained a coldness that could freeze one's heart. "Is that so?" The air suddenly froze. The girl suddenly opened her eyes as if countless invisible chains suddenly shot out from the space around Noah, firmly binding Noah's body. Noah only felt his body suddenly tighten, and an indescribable restraint came without any warning, nailing Noah on an invisible cross, depriving him of the control of his body. Noah's eyes focused, and he felt that his body didn't belong to him at this moment, and he couldn't move at all. Looking up, Noah could clearly see the changes in the dark girl's expression. In the dark night, one of the pair of dark eyes that was darker than the darkness completely turned into an ominous bright red. That color was more intense than the eyes of the cursed child when he released his power, and it was the color of blood. That is. Noah looked straight at the bright red eye. Magic eye. Magic eye. The ability to change the passive function of the eyes to actively affect the outside world, and to project magic through the line of sight, was called the magic eye. In other words, it was the ability to directly turn the eyes into bullets and bullets. Bullets were magic. A magician who could use the magic eye could rely on the magic eye to affect all targets within their line of sight. As long as the target was caught by the magic eye, they would be trapped in the opponent's magic. It was a magic that was completely impossible to guard against. Therefore, having the magic eye was the proof of being a first-class magician. The girl in front of him, who looked younger than Noah, was already top-notch in terms of her ability as a magician. It's really surprising. The dark-skinned young lady with one black and one red eyes said these words with an expressionless face. Undoubtedly, even a third-rate magician would not do such a thing to look directly at my eyes after knowing that it was the magic eye. The magic eye was the ability to cast magic on the opponent through the line of sight. Of course, looking directly at the eyes of a magician with the magic eye would not only increase the risk of being caught by the magic eye at any time, but it would also make the power of the magic eye more unrestrained on the opponent, making the power of the magic eye even stronger. Clearly knowing the power of the magic eye, an excellent magician would not directly look at the opponent. However, Noah did so. Therefore, the dark girl should be really surprised, but whether she was surprised by Noah's audacity or surprised by Noah's behavior that was worse than a third-rate magician's, she did not know. So this is the magic eye. Noah used all his strength but was unable to move even a little bit. His entire body, except for his blood and organs, should not be able to move anywhere else. It seems that the dark girl's magic eye was to ensure that the opponent's life was at a minimum, and at the same time to restrain the opponent, making it impossible for the opponent to escape. To deal with the magic eye, the simplest method was to escape the opponent's line of sight. And to break free from the magic eye, there was also the simplest and most violent method. Instantly squander a large amount of magic power that was more powerful than the opponent's magic eye. Noah had nothing. The most magic power. Pung. In an instant, a violent storm of magic power erupted from Noah's body, like a storm, spreading out. The dark girl's pupils shrank, and she immediately retreated. Dong! The magic power turned into a shockwave, blowing away all the leaves and branches around Noah. Pung! As if something had broken, Noah's body emitted a clear cracking sound, and immediately, Noah's body regained its freedom. What a fierce little girl! Noah deliberately said in a hoarse voice, laughing out loud. It is impolite not to reciprocate. After saying this, Noah raised his hand, and the torrential magic power immediately retracted back into Noah's body. Seeing this, the dark girl's expressionless face finally showed a trace of seriousness. Chapter 289. A second ago, the forest was still raging with wind, but now it suddenly became calm. However, in the air, an extremely oppressive feeling spread out like a sticky swamp, firmly pressing down on the entire forest. Her sharp battle instincts made the pitch-black girl realize the true terror of her opponent. Therefore, the pitch-black girl had reason to believe. In the next second, it would be her time of death. Looking at the black-clothed person who raised his hand high above his head, emitting a dangerous aura, the pitch-black girl took a light breath, and the hand hidden under the pitch-black shawl moved. Ding-ling. In the midst of a bell-like sound, the pitch-black girl took out a dangling, cat-shaped bell that seemed to be made of glass or gemstones. Ding-ling. Releasing the slender fingers that were holding the cat bell, the pitch-black girl let the glass-like cat bell in her hand fall to the ground. Immediately, the cat bell that fell to the ground seemed to sink into the water. The ground was like a splash of water, and in a series of ripples, it seemed to have fallen into the water and disappeared there. Looking at this scene with his own eyes, Noah frowned in confusion. His superb sensing ability told Noah that the cat bell that seemed to have sunk into water and disappeared on the ground seemed to have some kind of function that couldn't be seen on the surface. Build it up with wood and clay, wood and clay, wood and clay, build it up with wood and clay, my fair lady. At this moment, a light, bell-like song came from the ground, and in a flash, it spread over the entire forest. That song was completely different from the one that accompanied the girl's appearance at the beginning. At the very least, Noah had a creepy feeling as though he was being stared at by an invisible eye at the moment the ballad was played. Without the slightest hesitation, Noah gave up the idea of condensing magic, intending to launch a large-scale crush, and directly raze this place to the ground. He jumped back, and retreated explosively. Rumble. In the same second, the ground where Noah was just standing suddenly shook as if it had exploded. Not only did it crack, but it also directly protruded like a volcanic eruption. Wood and clay will wash away, falling down, build it up with bricks and mortar, my fair lady. As the melodious song reverberated in the air, the earth began to tremble. The pitch-black girl expressionlessly closed her eyes, and as if she was whispering before sleep, she softly called out. Come, it's your turn, Bridge. Her voice, as soon as she finished speaking. Woo! As if it directly sounded from the distant ancient times, a long sound that represented a long history came from the ground, and the sound shook the air. Kacha kacha. The trees behind the pitch-black girl's back, and the ground also accelerated, and constantly collapsed and destroyed. Woo! After a long roar, a true monster appeared behind the pitch-black girl. Pung! Pushing the earth, and squeezing the ground. It was a monster that seemed to be unable to take shape, and just its upper body alone was more than 8 meters tall. Tree roots like blood vessels covered its whole body, and it was filled with the traces of time. Stones became its muscles. Trees formed its body. Countless branches spread out on its surface, and a huge bridge-like arm was raised high, covering the sky. His vision was completely filled by the giant that covered the sky. Noah looked at the giant that let out a long roar with a dumbfounded expression, and was extremely stunned. Noah had seen existences that were more exaggerated than the giant in front of him. Not to mention others, if Makarov used gigantification to the limit, then in a flash, he could transform into a giant that was bigger than an island. In the world of Black Bullet, Scorpio, in Stage V, Zodiac, was hundreds of thousands of meters tall. Compared to those two, the giant in front of him was like a child. However, from the memories obtained from Gaia and Alea, Noah did not find any information about a magician being able to control such a giant. Could that be a familiar? The so-called demonic servants referred to those who were created by magicians. They were similar to robots, and they existed specifically to help their masters. They were like summoned beasts that could be ordered by their magician masters. Whether it was in daily life or in battle, they were objects that could play a supporting role. It was not strange for a magician to have a familiar. However, when a familiar was created by a magician, although it would be given a part of its master's abilities, it would not have power that was above its master's. Therefore, demonic servants were often used by magicians to solve their daily difficulties. In terms of battle, demonic servants would at most play a supporting role. The giant in front of him could only play a supporting role in battle? Even an idiot would not think so. That was definitely not an ordinary, familiar bridge. The pitch-black girl's voice was extremely appropriate. Deal with him. The voice was as cold as before, but it could definitely chill anyone's heart. Woo! The giant that covered the sky let out a long roar that shook the sky. It raised its bridge-like arm, and like a mountain falling from the sky, it rubbed against the chaotic atmosphere and brought a sharp explosion sound as it fiercely fell in Noah's direction. In an instant, the light from the sky was completely blocked by the fist that fell like a mountain. The shadow of death descending from above made Noah subconsciously tense his body. He raised his head and stared at the giant fist that fell like a meteor, and his heart suddenly moved. A burst of dazzling light rose from Noah's body. In the dazzling light, a golden scabbard appeared in a flash, and then suddenly disintegrated. Wang wang. The fragments of the scabbard were still shining with a golden light, and turned into a crystal-like barrier. When combined together, it was like a protective cover that directly covered Noah's body. Against the extremely dense wind pressure, the giant's fist fell heavily on the barrier as if it was the end of the world. Dong! A loud and muffled sound that resounded through one's heart rippled out, bringing with it a terrifying shockwave that spread out in all directions. The dark girl's ice-like face changed slightly, and she retreated without thinking. Hoo! The frenzied storm swept through every corner of the scene, cutting down trees, blasting stones, and narrowly brushing past the dark girl's body, almost blowing her away. After an unknown amount of time, the frenzied impact wind that wreaked havoc in the forest quietly retreated. After retreating quite a distance, an invisible barrier appeared in front of the pitch-black girl, blocking all of the rubble, wood, and wind. However, it still made the pitch-black girl's emotionless eyes flash with a trace of lingering fear. Under such circumstances, the dark girl was unable to discover it. Just at the side, in a bush that was fortunately not attacked by the impact wind and waves, and could still be more or less intact, two black shadows quietly appeared there. They were two men with a split mouth that was dark all over, and only their mouths were bright red, but they were long enough to touch their ears. Clang! A cold light flashed from the hands of the two fish-mouthed men. The arms of the two fish-mouthed men also turned into two huge kitchen knives, exposing the murderous aura and hostility of the two fish-mouthed men. The dark girl finally noticed that something was wrong, and she turned her head abruptly, looking at the bush on the side. However, at this time, she found that there was no way to stop the murderous maniac hiding in the dark. Whoosh! Almost in the blink of an eye, the two men with a split mouth rushed out like lone wolves, turning into afterimages. The huge murderous weapons in their hands were like fangs, and in the cold light and wind, they mercilessly cut towards the dark girl's head. After understanding the situation, the dark girl's cold, doll-like pretty face suddenly changed. Chapter 290. Clang! A cold light flashed through the air like lightning, cutting toward the defenseless dark-skinned girl. Her dark eyes reflected the image of the sharp kitchen knife that cut through the atmosphere. The dark-skinned girl's doll-like beautiful face suddenly changed, but after a while, she returned to being indifferent and emotionless. It wasn't because the dark-skinned girl found a way to avoid death. The girl just calmly accepted her impending death. Obviously, for the girl, death wasn't worth being afraid of. Was it because the girl was extraordinary and had seen through the world of mortals? Or was it because the girl knew that she would meet such an end sooner or later? This point, no one knew. And the two men who had turned into homicidal maniacs clearly didn't want to be merciful because of this. They held sharp kitchen knives, one on the left and one on the right side of the girl, swung their weapons, and like scissors, cut toward the girl's white and slender neck. Woo! Sensing the crisis of its master, the giant let out a wail. Unfortunately, having a huge body also had its disadvantages. Every move required time, and it was quite clumsy. Therefore, the giant could only let out a wail, and only had time to clumsily twist its body. It was impossible for it to rescue the girl. Of course, the giant couldn't do it, but it didn't mean that others couldn't. Wang! Below the giant's huge fist that was still on the ground, the space suddenly shook, and flashed with little golden light, as if condensing into a vortex of air, crazily converging. Pung! Immediately, a low muffled sound rang. A figure like a bright golden light suddenly flashed, with a long light tail, as if piercing through space, and flashed in front of the dark-skinned girl in an instant. Then, the owner of the figure raised his hand, and a gorgeous scabbard that bloomed with golden light suddenly flashed in front of his palm, turning into pieces of crystal, forming a dreamlike protective shield, and shook like a spring. Ding! The two huge kitchen knives, which were strong enough to cut through rocks, fell on the dreamlike protective shield that rose up with a crisp sound, creating a loud noise. Gotcha! The protective shield formed by the scabbard didn't even have a trace of crack, and the powerful force on the kitchen knives bounced back, causing the two huge sharp kitchen knives to crack at the same time. Clang! A second later, the two giant kitchen knives broke in half and spun like a windmill before disappearing into the forest. Slap! Inside the dreamy protective shield, a hand suddenly reached out and grabbed the face of one of the men with a split mouth. Whang! A dazzling white light instantly rose from the palm of the hand that was holding the man's face, illuminating the whole body of the man. In the white light, the man's body seemed to have been completely cut into cubes, and white marks appeared on his body. Then, such a voice lightly reverberated. Shatter! The dazzling white light surged. Bang! The man with the fissure didn't even have a chance to react. In the loud explosion, his body exploded, turning into fragments that sputtered in all directions. The remaining man with the fissure was trembling all over. Without any hesitation, he turned around and frantically fled to the other side of the forest. However, that would require the consent of the person who controlled his life and death. Woo! Over the entire forest, a long roar that represented anger exploded like thunder. A huge fist, like a falling meteor, rubbed against the atmosphere and fell, heavily smashing into the body of the man with the fisheye who was trying to escape. Bang! The strike that caused the earth to tremble directly buried his opponent. The whole process didn't even take 10 seconds. The two assassins hiding in the dark were killed by Noah and the giant. They didn't feel any pain and didn't realize their situation before they died. They didn't even have a complete body. Both of them died. The forest returned to peace once again. Whang! The dreamy protective shield turned back into a scabbard shining with golden light, then turned into a little starlight and returned to Noah's body. Hiss! Noah, who was standing in front of the dark girl, took a deep breath and a painful expression flashed across his face. One of his feet was still twitching, as if it was extremely painful. It was indeed extremely painful. From the beginning to the end, Noah had only released 1/10 of his magic power. The strength of his body was still under the seal of the limit ability, so he was only at the level of an ordinary person. The leap forward was the same as the annihilation strike. It would cause a certain burden to the user's body. Using the leap forward, which would cause a burden to the body, was a normal thing to feel pain. At this time, behind Noah, a cold voice with a trace of anger entered Noah's ears. Why? Noah was stunned, then he turned around and looked behind him. There, a young girl in black clothes and a shawl, who was as black as Noah, was looking at Noah with a puzzled expression that he had never seen before. Her red lips parted slightly. Why? The why here was naturally referring to the reason why Noah wanted to save the girl who was his enemy. The girl felt that Noah was an intruder who wanted to seize the spirit vein of Sanyi City, so she had the idea of eliminating the intruder and wanted to kill Noah. And as an intruder who wanted to seize the land, he had no reason to save her. The magicians of this world were not like the sorcerers, who could use magic in the open. In this world, concealment was the essence of magic. The more people knew and used magic, the more the magic's power would be scattered and weakened. Because magic was a power that had already been determined in the origin, the more people knew about it, the weaker its power would be. This was easy to understand. Originally, if the power of 10 was used by one person, the power would be 100% of 10. If two people used it, then one person would only be able to use 5, which was only half of the power. The 10 here was the magic's power in the origin. Therefore, in this kind of situation, the more people who used magic, the less power the magicians could get. Therefore, most magicians would do their best to maintain the mystery of their magic. Even if their magic was discovered by ordinary people, magicians would have to eliminate them to maintain the mystery of their magic. Simply put, it was to kill the witnesses. For magicians, killing was definitely not something that they needed to feel guilty about. It was also because of this that most of the battles between magicians were decided by the death of the magician. As long as there was enough reason, even if it was family or friends, magicians would kill each other. As a pure magician, the girl did not understand. Undoubtedly, Noah, who wanted to seize the land of Sanyi City, had enough reason to kill her and obtain the ownership of the spirit vein of this land. Why would he save her now? Perhaps this also hurt the girl's self-esteem as a magician, so the girl's tone, other than the usual indifference, had a rare emotion. Noah of course knew why the girl had such a question. It was because he knew that. Noah snorted. Because I wanted to save you, so I saved you. What is the reason? The eyes hidden under the hat glanced at the girl. Noah did not give the girl a chance to speak and directly said, "Don't use your magician's tricks on me." This sentence made the girl's eyes move slightly. You're not a magician. At least, I don't admit that I'm the ideal magician in your heart. Noah did not realize that his voice had returned to normal. After throwing out this sentence, he faced the girl. Today's game will end here. Say hello to Aoko Aozaki for me. The girl's dark eyes suddenly focused. This performance naturally fell into Noah's eyes, causing a look of, as expected, to appear in Noah's eyes. His figure moved, flashed into the bushes at the side, and disappeared into the shadows of the forest. The girl instinctively wanted to stop Noah, but after realizing that it was meaningless, she closed her mouth and looked at the direction Noah disappeared without saying anything for a long time. Woo! Behind the girl, the giant that covered the sky let out a long roar. Like the fog in winter, it slowly disappeared as if it had never appeared. Chapter 291. The next morning, after dealing with a group of classmates who were gossiping about Noah defeating a group of seniors yesterday, Noah sat in his seat and yawned. What's wrong? Sitting behind Noah, although he didn't put his feet on the table, Yuan Wan, who was leaning on the back of the chair, removed the book that covered his face and asked in confusion. Didn't sleep well last night? It's okay. Noah yawned and responded casually. I just slept a little late. Noah's spiritual power had become quite strong after many enhancements. Naturally, he wouldn't feel tired just because he slept a little late. However, Noah didn't just sleep late last night, he also went through a battle in the forest. And after a battle last night, he woke up so leisurely and lazy this morning, it was inevitable that people would want to yawn. Slept late? Yuan Wan raised his eyebrows. You can't be. Looking at Yuan Wan's slightly rough eyes with a trace of filth, Noah didn't even need to think with his knees to know what this young master was thinking. He immediately rolled his eyes. Do you think I'm as playful as you? I just wasted a lot of time because I went out to work. What do you mean by a playboy? I've never tried that kind of thing before, okay? Itamar yelled at Noah like he was cursing him. Also, you actually have a job. Of course I have to work. I can't compare to the young master of the chairman's family. Someone sent money into my pocket for me to spend. Noah waved his hand. If you think I'm pitiful, why don't you just throw some money to me? Don't forget, not long ago, you threw away 20 million that could have been in your hands at any time. I can't learn this kind of heroic spirit. Yuan Wan said somewhat lazily. By the way, what kind of job did you find? Tutoring. Noah didn't hide it. Teaching the children in the family and playing the piano. You can play the piano? Itamar looked at Noah in a daze. You're a top student, you can beat my old man in chess, and now you can play the piano. Just tell me what else you know. What else can you do? Noah continued to yawn. Does being proficient in all the languages in the world count? Yuan Wan almost spat out a mouthful of saliva. He couldn't help but abruptly stand up and cry out in disbelief. You're proficient in all the languages of the world? With just one sentence, the noisy classroom immediately quietened down. Just as Noah felt that something was wrong, a commotion erupted in the classroom. Proficient in all the languages of the world? Who? Noah? Really? Hey, you're not trying to show off just to pick up girls, are you? Tell me about it. Let's hear it. The boys and girls in the class immediately squeezed Yuan Wan out and surrounded Noah. They kept chattering, almost making Noah faint. As the vice president, Yuan Wan, who was pushed aside as if there was no one else around, had a face as dark as the bottom of a pot. Looking at the group of students jumping around Noah, he could not bear it any longer and shouted out loud. What are you bunch of idiots doing? At the door of the classroom, an angry roar sounded without any warning, directly overshadowing Yuan Wan's voice, and also covering the entire classroom's noise inconceivably. The classroom suddenly fell silent for the second time. This voice. Don't tell me it's. When Yuan Wan decisively shut his mouth, the group of students turned their heads in fear and looked in the direction of the classroom door. Then, everyone saw it. Although it's not time for class yet, until the bell rings, you have the freedom to arrange your free time. Saying such a sentence, Aoko stood at the door of the classroom with her arms crossed. She looked like she could endure a little before she exploded and angrily glared at everyone in the classroom. But, didn't anyone tell you that you bunch of idiots are too noisy? The second roar fell, causing the group of students to let out a miserable sound. Not good. The president of the Demon Student Council is going to be angry. We're going to die. We're going to die. Why aren't you running? Wait. For the time being, this is still our classroom. Yes. Even if the president of the student council is in our territory, he has to listen to us. Very good, as expected of our 2A's Bravehearts. Regarding your bravery in challenging the evil spirit, I will definitely spread it throughout the entire Samui High School. You can go in peace, we won't accompany you anymore. You bunch of traitors. Wait for us. Accompanied by such a conversation, in less than a minute, whether it was boys or girls, they all fled like stray dogs. Looking at this exaggerated scene, Noah was almost speechless. Do you dare to be a little more spineless? At this time, Aoko walked into the classroom as if there was no one around. Under the curious gaze of the group of students who gathered at the door and did not dare to come in, she came in front of Noah and looked down at him condescendingly. Noah, classmate, are you free after school? Aoko's words made everyone, including Torimaru, open their eyes wide. What does this mean? What? Noah was also slightly startled, but he quickly returned to normal and looked at Aoko with a smile that was not a smile. Does the president of the student council want to invite me on a date? The rest of the students present all subconsciously held their breaths. Only Aoko stared at Noah and said in a cold voice. I thought you were slightly different from other boys, but I did not expect you to be the same. Your head is filled with those meaningless things. The implication was that Noah's head was the same as those stinky boys, only lust. Is there anything strange about it? Noah unhurriedly spread out his hands. As a boy, no matter what, I have to have some experience in love. In the future, I still want to be healthy and have children with the person I love, so I don't have that kind of great idea of, I can survive even if I'm alone. The implication was that Aoko, who does not need to be in love, will definitely not be able to get married in the future. After all, Aoko did equate love with wasting time. This unexpected attack caused unimaginable damage, and it made Aoko's eyes twitch. And the group of students who witnessed the dangerous confrontation between the legendary transfer student and the president of the student council were boiling. Could it be that our school finally has a person who can suppress the president of the student council? Amazing. Too amazing. I'm so touched. No, I have to take out the special feature I have been hiding for a long time and share it with Noah. This way, I can show my respect to the transfer student. Even others were like this. As the vice president of the student council, Yuan Maru, who had been poisoned by Aoko for 1 or 2 years, almost directly gave Noah the word, convinced. Aoko, who clearly heard the discussion behind her, held back her anger. She looked at Noah with a fake smile, and her eyes were fierce. Are you free after school? The same sentence. The same tone. But when she said it again, Aoko's whole body emitted a frightening sense of oppression. The students who were still talking were like ducks who were strangled by the neck. Their voices came to an abrupt stop, they looked at each other, and then stepped back without any backbone. Noah laughed in his heart, and no longer teased Aoko. He straightforwardly said, "After school, I have to do tutoring. Even if the president of the student council wants to invite me on a date, I'm not free." Aoko's head made a snap sound, as if something was broken. If it was someone else, even if they didn't beat up Noah, they would definitely turn around and leave. Unfortunately, the words defeat and convinced never existed in Aoko's dictionary. For Aoko, turning around and leaving was equivalent to admitting defeat. Therefore, the more Noah refused, the more angered Aoko was, and the more difficult it was for Aoko to face the difficulties. At this moment, Aoko took a deep breath, calmly looked at Noah, and said in a businesslike manner, "According to the rules of Mitsui High School, students are not allowed to work privately. Even if they apply, they can't work more than 4 hours a day without holidays." Hearing this, Noah raised his eyebrows. And then? Aoko smiled. Her smile was very charming, but it also chilled everyone's heart. 4 hours, I can still wait. I hope Noah-san won't let me wait too long. Chapter 292. No matter which world it was, the sun rises from the east and the sun sets in the west, were eternal themes. The sun gradually set behind the mountains in the west and slowly turned red. The color of the clouds in the sky also turned bright red bit by bit. Dusk had arrived. Although the advancement of urbanization had already begun in Myo City, 10 years was clearly not enough to turn Myo City into a truly modern city filled with tall buildings. The setting sun shone on the still developing city, shining on the gradually disappearing scenes of the pastoral landscape, making the philosophical saying that the things that have passed away will never come back again truly show the cruel reality in front of people's eyes. Under the guidance of Aoko, Noah arrived at the White Dog Mound in Myo City. It was an area where ramps wound down from hills that were much higher than the ground. A long time ago, people believed that they should not live in places that were too high, so there were no signs of human habitation at a certain height. Similarly, the White Dog Mound was no exception. There were no houses on the hill. If one walked along the road and climbed up the slope, not long after, a forest would appear in front of the road, surrounding the asphalt road. On such a slope, Aoko walked at a steady pace without stopping. Clearly, she was already very used to this kind of long journey. Beside Aoko, Noah walked along the slope with a calm expression. Not to mention a difficult expression, there was not even a drop of sweat on his face. He even had the spare energy to observe the surroundings and enjoy the scenery. Although the physical ability was limited to the level of an ordinary person, the ordinary person here was naturally at a better level. If it was only climbing, it was not difficult for Noah at all. Not to mention, Noah also had the breathing technique that could quickly restore his physical strength and increase his endurance. Not to mention other things, his physical strength was definitely sufficient. This made Aoko could not help but glance at Noah. "I didn't expect your physical strength to be so good. No wonder you could beat up those senior students who were looking for trouble. So your good physical strength is also related to good fighting? Noah did not turn his head and replied to Aoko. "Besides, isn't your stamina pretty good too? I'm just used to it." Aoko's tone was quite casual, as if she was just brushing him off, but it was hard to get angry. "Since you have such a good body, I'm even more relieved." Noah became suspicious. "Rest assured?" Aoko glanced at the confused Noah and smiled. "You'll be glad that you have good stamina later." After saying that, Aoko turned her head away and stopped talking. She didn't want to talk to Noah anymore. She just continued to climb up the steep slope. Noah shook his head and followed. The ramp was indeed quite long. Even if they were to run, it would take about 20 minutes to reach the halfway point. Noah and Aoko walked up the ramp at a steady pace. When the sky turned even redder, they arrived at their destination. Aoko brought Noah to an extremely old iron fence that was surrounded by walls and vines. Aoko extended her hand and pushed it open. Noah was not surprised to see that Aoko had stopped in front of Aoko. Noah could see it. Behind the iron fence, there was a grassland covered with weeds in what was supposed to be a courtyard. There were trees planted in the courtyard, but those trees were not green willows. Instead, they were old trees that seemed to have withered. The surroundings were gloomy, and there was even fog in the courtyard. It was like a haunted house, which made people feel numb. What made people feel even more numb was that between the gaps of the trees in the courtyard, there was a path that extended forward until it reached the front of a manor house. It was a manor house that looked quite luxurious but exuded an ancient aura. Its scale was comparable to an average villa. There was a manor house in such a creepy place. It was believed that if people who did not know about it came here, they would definitely think it was a haunted house and leave screaming. Although Noah would not scream and leave, he still felt very strange that Aoko had brought him here. Where is this? Originally, Noah did not expect Aoko to give a reliable answer. However, when Aoko answered, Noah realized that the answer was surprisingly reliable, and it could make everyone speechless. Aoko Aozaki only said 2 words. My home. Your home. Noah looked at Aoko with a different expression. It was as if he was looking at a mentally ill person. Although I know that you are used to acting alone, I didn't expect you to have such a unique taste. I won't comment. Although he said that, Noah's eyes were fixed on the manor house. As mentioned before, there were 2 large barriers in Sanyo City. One of them was used to survey and detect the movement of magic, and the other was used to gather the magic underground of Sanyo City in one place. At this time, Noah sensed that the magic underground of Sanyo City was gathered in the manor house in front of him. In other words, the person who lived in the manor house in front of him was the manager of Sanyo City's spiritual vein. Aoko said that this was her home. In other words, Aoko was indeed the manager of Sanyo City's spiritual vein. No. It should be said that she was one of the managers. The dark girl last night was obviously also the manager of Sanyo City's spiritual vein. It was very likely that she shared the spiritual vein of Sanyo City with Aoko and lived here together. Noah could not help but mutter to himself. The girl who controlled the overly powerful tamed demon couldn't be here, right? Why did Aoko bring him here? Did she discover his identity and want to bring him in to encircle him? As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Noah was extremely stunned when Aoko revealed her real purpose. Okay. Standing in front of the manor house's main entrance, Aoko pointed at the weeds in the courtyard and gave an order as if it was a matter of course. Pull out all the weeds here. What did you just say? Even Noah could not help but ask again. I didn't hear it very clearly. Say it again. I said, pull out all the weeds here. Aoko brushed her long hair. Her words and actions were very natural, as if she was saying, it's time to eat. She did not realize how difficult her words were. Noah fixed his gaze on Aoko. When he realized that Aoko's expression did not seem to be joking at all, but was very serious, he turned his head without hesitation and walked in the direction of the iron fence. However, after walking for a short while, Noah's body suddenly paused. Immediately, he took a small step to the left. Whoosh! At the same time, a slender leg, like a thick and heavy whip, hit the spot where Noah had been standing. Huh! Aoko, who had thrown her leg without hesitation, was surprised, as if she did not expect Noah to be able to dodge her attack. Pa! While Aoko was still in a daze, Noah suddenly extended his hand and grabbed Aoko's ankle. Then, with a forceful pull, Noah pulled Aoko's ankle in his direction. Aoko suddenly lost her balance and fell forward. Just as she was about to stabilize herself, she found that there was a leg in front of her only leg that was standing on the ground, tripping her slightly. Aoko, whose legs were suspended in the air, could not stabilize herself this time. She cried out in alarm and fell to the ground with a bang. She was in so much pain that she gritted her teeth. Alas! Noah, who was standing still, looked down at Aoko, who had fallen to the ground, and sighed heavily. Although I have long known that the student union president of Matama High School is a very domineering person, I didn't expect him to be even more domineering than I imagined. Not only did he inexplicably ask people to pull out weeds, but he also kicked people casually. I say, President Ouchie, did you deliberately bring me here because you don't like me? Like those seniors, you want to show your power to the transfer students, right? What did you say? Aoko, who was grimacing in pain from the fall, was furious. She jumped up from the ground, made a gesture of kicking, and shouted out loud. I would never do such a thing. Undoubtedly, Aoko mercilessly threw out her leg again, bringing with it a fierce wind, in the direction of Noah. Seeing this, Noah shrugged, but there was a look of interest in his eyes. Chapter 293. Pa dash. Goo dash. A muffled sound was heard, followed by a muffled groan. Aoko, who was once again thrown to the ground by him, looked at him as if he was her enemy. Her face was full of stubbornness, and Noah couldn't help but feel amused. I say, President Aoko, you're not my opponent, shouldn't you stop? Who are you saying is not your opponent? Aoko stood up from the ground, but she felt like her whole body was about to fall apart, and her heart was filled with hatred. Aoko Aozaki was a magician. Aoko thought that she hid this matter well, but she didn't know that this matter was already known by the boy in front of her who she hated to the core. If it was magic, Aoko certainly wouldn't lose to Noah, who was an ordinary person. However, the essence of magic was to hide. If an ordinary person witnessed the existence of magic, the magician who exposed the existence of magic must eliminate the witnesses. Aoko hated Noah to the core, but that was only anger, and not to the point where she wanted to kill Noah. Therefore, without exposing the existence of magic, if Aoko wanted to teach Noah a lesson, she naturally had to rely on ordinary means. Originally, Aoko also knew some fighting skills. Otherwise, the students of Mitsui High School would not be so afraid of her. It was because of these fighting techniques that Aoko was able to kick the former student council president, who had tried to pursue her and stalk her, out of her mind when she had just entered Sani High School. Aoko then applied to transfer to another school. With this great deed, Aoko's pursuers in Miran High School finally didn't dare to bother her anymore, and they were afraid of her like a tiger. I'm afraid that this was the reason why Oromaru gave such exaggerated advice to Noah, who was planning to pursue Aoko Aozaki, because he thought that it was him. Unfortunately, this fighting technique was no different from a child playing with mud in the eyes of Noah, whose fighting skills and fighting experience had long surpassed God. If it weren't for Noah deliberately controlling his strength, and deliberately changing her landing posture when she fell, so that Aoko would only feel a little pain and not be injured, she would have more or less suffered some superficial wounds. You still want to fight? Seeing that Aoko was about to rush up again, the smile on Noah's face disappeared little by little, and he finally had a headache. President Aoko, I heard that you hate people who pester you. What you're doing now is no different from pestering someone. Aoko was furious. But Aoko had to admit that she knew that she was no match for him, but she still rushed up to him like a pester. Aoko, who had nothing to say, could only glare at Noah. Her eyes were on the verge of spitting fire. In Aoko's heart, Noah must have become a hateful and loathsome person, just like the person who killed her father. Not fighting anymore? Noah shrugged. Then I'm leaving. Wait. Aoko Aozaki shouted. Pull out all the weeds before you leave. As soon as these words came out, Noah looked at Aoko as if he was looking at a crazy person. Are you sure you're serious? Aoko's expression changed. After a while, she finally put away her posture and looked straight at Noah with a sullen face. I understand. I didn't make it clear. I apologize. Aoko's tone returned to her usual indifferent and businesslike manner. Noah knew that Aoko had calmed down, so he didn't rush to leave. He stood there and looked at Aoko, indicating that she should explain. As you can see, there are indeed a lot of weeds here. My roommate and I want to tidy up this place. Aoko seemed to have regained her composure. She also seemed to have forgotten that Noah had thrown her to the ground many times. She said this. Originally, I wanted to pay someone to help me clean up, but my roommate doesn't like humans, so I wanted to find someone to help. In the end, I'm the sacrifice? Noah sighed. Also, the reason for hating humans is really new. Also, does President Aoko think that I'm not human? Compared to someone who I don't know where they found you, you're still a student of my school. My roommate shouldn't be hostile to you for no reason. Aoko glanced at Noah. It's my fault for not making it clear in advance. We won't let you work for free. We'll pay you well. You don't have any objections, right? Noah wanted to say yes, but after thinking about it carefully, he dismissed the idea. This was Aoko's residence. The magical power of the spiritual vein in Sanayo City was also gathered here. Since Aoko was likely to be the manager of the spiritual vein in Sanayo City, and the girl who controlled the giant last night was also the manager of Sanayo City, then could there be a third manager? Since he had nothing to do, he might as well stay and observe the situation. Maybe he could find something new. As for pulling weeds, it was not a problem at all. In the world of fairy tale, Noah had trained in the deep mountains for 4 years. At that time, in order to train his physical strength, what kind of hard training did Noah not do? Pulling weeds? That was not hard at all. With this thought, Noah nodded and agreed. Since President has asked me for help, I'm just a transfer student. If I don't help, I might be bullied. It's better to be sensible. Aoko's mouth twitched. She kept telling herself not to be angry. If she was angry, she would fall into the enemy's trap and be led by the nose. Oh, right, Noah, who was squatting down and preparing to pull weeds, turned around and smiled at Aoko. Remember the pay you mentioned? Aoko's temples were bulging with veins. She clenched her fists tightly and her delicate body trembled. In the end, she realized that she could not control her anger at all, so she decided to just ignore it. I hope you can finish before the sky turns dark. Just as Aoko was about to enter the manor house, she seemed to have thought of something. She turned around and said to Noah in annoyance, "Don't worry. Also, no matter what, don't come into the mansion. Not even one step, if you still care about your life." Aoko left behind these words that were either a threat or a threat. She angrily entered the mansion and slammed the door. Noah, who had been watching Aoko enter the mansion, couldn't help but laugh. Noah's personality had always been to be in control. If others wanted to be domineering, Noah would be even more domineering. Therefore, when facing Aoko, who was also domineering, Noah couldn't help but want to tease her and suppress her. This naturally made Aoko, who was also domineering, hate Noah to the core. However, Noah didn't hate Aoko. After all, no matter how angry or domineering she was, Aoko had a good heart. Otherwise, after being bullied by Noah, Aoko wouldn't have remembered to warn Noah not to enter the mansion. The people living in the mansion were magicians. It wouldn't be strange to be killed if one broke into a magician's territory. Aoko still remembered to warn Noah. Wasn't this enough to prove that Aoko had a good heart? Seeing that you're thinking about me, I'll go easy on you next time. Noah laughed and shook his head. He rolled up the sleeves of his uniform. Before he started to pull out the weeds in the courtyard, he raised his eyes and looked at the sky. The corner of his mouth curved into a mischievous smile. Clap, 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 clap. In the sky above the mansion, a flock of gray starlings flapped their wings and hovered above the mansion. They stayed on the roof for a while, then flew up again. They hovered above the mansion and didn't leave the range of the mansion. This flock of gray starlings was the flock of magical birds that came to the forest when Noah first came to this world and touched the barrier of Sanayo City. They weren't ordinary birds, but familiars. This flock of gray starlings was probably the manager of Sanayo City's spirit vein, Aoko, or perhaps the girl who controlled the giant used to investigate. That meant that even if it seemed like Noah was the only one left, one of the magicians in the mansion was also monitoring Noah. Things are getting more and more interesting. Chapter 294. The night came quietly. At that moment, the haunted house-like mansion was lit up with some lights. The lights shone on the courtyard that was surrounded by dead trees, bringing some light to it. In the courtyard, there were many black garbage bags filled with weeds piled up. At first glance, there were at least 10 or 20 of them. These black garbage bags were all filled with weeds. One could imagine how many weeds there were here. Noah, who had put on a pair of rough white gloves at some point in time, pulled out the last handful of weeds and stuffed them all into the garbage bag in his hand. Without panting or blushing, he patted the gloves that stirred up waves of dust. Not long after Noah began to pull out the weeds, Aoko came out of the mansion and threw a pair of gloves to Noah. Even though Aoko was very cold at that time, there was still no way to hide the fact that she was kind enough to give gloves to her enemy. This made Noah feel that Aoko was the kind of girl who had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. But, it seems like there are a lot of weeds here. Noah looked at the pile of garbage bags in front of him, which was taller than him, and was a little speechless. How long has it been since someone came here to do maintenance? As if to specifically respond to Noah's question, a lukewarm voice sounded from behind Noah. Yeah, I also want to know how long it has been since someone came here to do maintenance. Accompanied by such a voice, the sound of footsteps began to approach Noah. And there were 2 of them. Noah's face was not surprised. Obviously, he had already noticed that someone was approaching him from behind. He immediately turned around and looked behind him. What appeared in front of Noah were 2 equally breathtakingly beautiful girls. The one walking in front was naturally Aoko. Aoko's unique posture was unique. Aoko changed out of her uniform into casual clothes, and her full appearance was exposed to Noah. She was wearing a white cashmere sweater and a black pleated skirt. Her high socks and snow boots were the first to enter Noah's field of vision, as if she was deliberately showing off her presence. In addition, Aoko Aozaki was holding a down jacket in her hand, which was also white. Aoko did have the capital to attract a large group of suitors. Aoko already had a beautiful face and a good figure. Coupled with her straightforward personality, if she wasn't so violent, her suitors would have filled up the entire slope of the White Dog Catacombs. However, Noah turned his attention to the other young lady behind Aoko and stared at her gentle footsteps as she approached slowly. Compared with Aoko who exuded vitality, the girl behind her seemed to be in sharp contrast with Aoko. She was surrounded by a tranquil atmosphere. Delicate like a doll's appearance. White pearl-like skin. Slender like an animal's limbs, she was as petite as a doll. Her shoulder-length black hair swayed in the wind. His eyes were dark and deep. It was a girl darker than the night, but clearer than a lake. The person who came was the dark girl who controlled the giant last night. As Noah expected, the dark girl and Aoko lived together, and they were both managers of the Spirit Vein in Sanyo City. Accompanied by quiet footsteps, the dark girl once again appeared in front of Noah. Her pair of impressionable eyes without any emotion were staring at Noah. She was not afraid of Noah's gaze. If it was a young girl, even if she didn't have any strange thoughts in her heart, she would still unnaturally avoid looking at the opposite sex, right? But the girl did not have this concern at all. She looked at Noah. Although she was not sizing him up, Noah could feel that the girl in front of him was undoubtedly scrutinizing him. However, in the process of examining him, the young lady suddenly furrowed her brows and her dark eyes deepened as she looked at Noah. Being stared at by such a pair of empty cold eyes, it was believed that even an Iron Man would find it unbearable. Noah wasn't affected much, but he pretended to look away and smiled at Aoko Aozaki. Is your friend in a bad mood? Hearing this, the demonic girl was still expressionless, but Aoko Aozaki burst out laughing. Don't mind it, don't mind it. Yuju is like this to everyone. She is just expressionless. This time, the girl could not continue to ignore him. She glanced at Aoko, and Noah could clearly see a trace of dissatisfaction emerging in her eyes. It seemed that this doll-like little girl was not as emotionless as she looked on the surface. There was still a warm place in her heart. Her name was Yuju, right? Originally, Noah wanted to pretend that he did not know Yuju and greet her, but when he looked in Yuju's direction, his heart could not help but beat like a drum. Because, from beginning to end, Yuju had been staring at Noah with emotionless eyes, as if she could see some secret from Noah. Even if the other party was Noah, he could not bear this oppressive silence. This made Noah very puzzled. Could it be that she recognized him? Yuju. Aoko seemed to have noticed that Yuju's behavior was a little different from usual, but she did not ask Yuju anything. Instead, like Yuju, she looked at Noah and did not let go. Being stared at by two girls who were very charming in all aspects, Noah could not stay calm no matter how calm he was, and immediately frowned. What are you two doing? Is there grass growing on my body? Aoko silently looked at Yuju, but all she got in return was Yuju closing her eyes as if she had fallen asleep, which made Aoko sigh. Don't blame me, I don't know what I'm doing now. You're done. As if deliberately changing the topic, Aoko pointed to the black garbage bag pile. You're quite capable. You actually finished it when it was dark. As if satisfied with Noah's performance, Aoko nodded. I'll give you the reward tomorrow at school. You can go back now. If you can take this garbage away, I'll be more grateful. That's all. After saying this, Aoko walked out of the room, minding her own business. On the side, Yuju opened her eyes and stared at Noah for a while, then followed behind Aoko and left the courtyard. Looking at Aoko and Yuju pushing open the iron fence and leaving without hesitation, Noah looked up thoughtfully. Pa. As expected, the gray birds flapped their wings and hovered in the sky. As long as Noah took one step closer to the mansion, these familiars would report the situation here to Aoko and Yuju, right? Obviously, although Aoko and Yuju left, they didn't really feel at ease leaving Noah alone in their residence. However, it was already so late. Where were the two managers of Mayo City going? With this thought in mind, Noah also took off the gloves in his hand, casually threw them on the garbage bag pile, and walked out as if nothing had happened. There was no light on the ramp at night, making people afraid that some monsters would suddenly jump out from the forest next to them. What's wrong today? Walking on this slope that she had walked countless times, Aoko frowned and asked Yuju who was beside her. Paying so much attention to those annoying humans? That doesn't seem like something you would do. I often do this when you're not here. Yuju didn't know if it was out of spite, or if it was really the case, but the expressionless Yuju responded softly. That person is your classmate? What? Aoko's expression became slightly serious. Is there a problem? Yuju was still pondering, and after a while, she shook her head. Nothing, just a little bit concerned. You actually care about someone you just met for the first time? Aoko was really surprised. Aoko was the only one who knew how cold her roommate was. At least, compared to Yuju, Aoko felt that she was more humane. And as if she was impatient with Aoko's shock, Yuju looked at Aoko with condemnation and changed the topic. Are you ready? You don't have to keep confirming. Since I said I'm ready, then I'm ready. Aoko's expression became serious, but immediately changed into stubbornness. I'll kill him. Chapter 295. There was no moon in the night sky today. Thick layers of dark clouds covered the entire dark night sky, shielding all the light sources in the sky on the other side. Who? The bone-piercing cold wind seemed to want to freeze everything, bringing along an unbearable low temperature, pervading every corner of Mayo City. Da. Accompanied by the sound of powerful footsteps, at the end of the cold wind, two girls as dark as the night slowly walked out. Braving the bone-piercing cold wind, they arrived at a ruin. We're here. Yuju was the first to stop her footsteps, and even closed her eyes, as if she didn't want to be associated with Aoko, retreating to the side. Compared to the expressionless Yuju, Aoko's expression was a lot more tense. Her face was full of a grim expression, and her usually fierce eyes were filled with a sinister expression. Her appearance was as if she was about to step into a battlefield. Is it here? Aoko looked straight ahead, and asked without turning her head. According to the boundary, the location of the intruders is here? One of them. Yuju said indifferently. The other two were in the forest, but they've already been dealt with. Yuju was naturally referring to the two men who hid in the dark and launched a sneak attack last night, putting Yuju in danger. In this world, magicians were not so much a group of people who controlled power, but rather a group of people who researched power. The fundamental goal of magicians was to reach the source, and magic was only a means to achieve this goal. Therefore, magicians weren't necessarily strong, but they were definitely researchers. In order to research magic, magicians would usually choose a spiritual vein as their base of operations. With the support of a spiritual vein, magicians had a great advantage. For example, performing magic, setting up boundaries, preventing outsiders from entering, accumulating magic power, and so on. All of these were of great help to magicians. In addition, magicians spent more than half of their life on research, and some of the topics related to magic couldn't be separated from the support of magic power. In the case of limited magic power, the progress of research would be greatly limited. In this way, a spiritual vein with a large amount of magic power would naturally be in high demand. However, the spiritual veins in this world were either owned by a magician group for the purpose of researching magic, the Magic Association, or managed by the most prestigious magician family. Magicians from outside couldn't borrow the power of a spiritual vein. There were only 3 ways for magicians to borrow the power of a spiritual vein. 1. Apply to the Magic Association for the right to use the spiritual vein. 2. Reach an agreement with the magician family managing the spiritual vein to borrow the power of the spiritual vein. 3. Rob the spiritual vein. Aoko Aozaki and Yuju were currently encountering the third type of situation, which was a foreign magician who had come to snatch the spirit vein. The 2 fisheye men from yesterday were also one of them. The enemy they were about to encounter tonight was also one of them. As for Noah, who hid his identity, Aoko didn't know of his existence. Yuju also didn't say anything about what happened last night, intentionally or unintentionally hiding the matter of Noah. Unexpectedly in such a conspicuous place? Aoko, who didn't know this, nodded heavily. She looked around the ruins and fixed her eyes on the road not far away. She was speechless. Yuju, has the boundary been set up? Yuju didn't speak. Aoko knew that with Yuju's personality, she might have already set up a boundary when she arrived at the scene. Although it wasn't a big deal, it was a pity that Aoko was just an apprentice magician. Aoko had been learning magic for about 1.5 years, not even 2 years. Compared to Aoko, Yuju had been practicing magic since she was a child and was now an outstanding magician who could take charge of her own tasks. Compared to Aoko, who was still a novice magician, Yuju was a true magician. She had always followed the rules of a magician, to the point that she was rigid in her actions. Thus, Aoko Aozaki aside, Yuju would definitely carry out the concealment is the essence of magic from beginning to end. Compared to Yuju, Aoko was indeed much weaker. At least, the gap was not small at all. Of course, Aoko had her own uniqueness. However, this uniqueness wasn't something that Aoko could rely on right now. Therefore, tonight could be said to be the day of Aoko's transformation. This was because Yuju wouldn't interfere in tonight's battle. This was Aoko's first battle. It was also her first battle where she decided to abandon human morality and kill with her own hands. It was easy to imagine how important this was to Aoko, who had been living the life of an ordinary person not long ago and followed the norms of an ordinary person's behavior. However, Aoko wouldn't run away. Running away wasn't something that Aoko would do. Therefore, Aoko had to bury the human part in her heart. Kacha, at this time, a mechanical sound was heard from the other side of the ruins. Aoko instantly reacted. She suddenly turned around, looked in the direction of the sound, and raised one of her hands. Buzz! On Aoko's arm, a burst of light suddenly flashed, penetrating her clothes and illuminating her dignified face. Taking a closer look, the light bloomed from a tattoo under Aoko's sleeve. That was the magic engraving. The magician had spent his entire life's energy to fix and stabilize the magic that originally had no substance. It was purely a bunch of tactics, so that they could become a part of his body. The result of this was the magic seal. The magic engraving on Aoko's body was the crystallization of magic passed down from generation to generation. With it, even if Aoko was just an apprentice magician, she could instantly use fixed magic like those outstanding magicians. However, just when Aoko decided to activate the magic engraving to kill the intruder, on the side, Yuju suddenly raised her head, her dark eyes staring at the pile of stones in front of her. Yuju. Aoko was slightly startled. When she was about to ask, an unforeseen event happened. Bang! In the pile of stones, a heavy muffled sound directly hit Aoko's and Yuju's heart, and suddenly exploded. Whoosh! Then, a black shadow was thrown out of the pile of stones like garbage and fiercely hit the ground. Bang! Immediately, the black shadow shattered into pieces and scattered all over the ground. That was actually a puppet. Whoosh! Aoko and Yuju didn't have time to react. In the original pile of stones, a figure rushed out at an extremely fast speed, turned a corner, and disappeared at the end of the road outside the ruins. Aoko and Yuju only then reacted. The two girls knew that they had been fooled. They originally thought that the intruder was here, but in the end, it was only an automatic puppet sent by the other side. And obviously, there was another person here just now. Don't run. Aoko was slightly surprised. Yuju. Chase. Aoko said, but found that Yuju didn't move at all. She suddenly gritted her teeth and chased out. At the scene, only Yuju stood in the same place, staring at the figure and the direction Aoko disappeared in. Her dark eyes didn't have the slightest trace of emotion. In the dark alley, Noah dodged and came out from the other side. His eyebrows wrinkled a little, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. I was actually discovered in such a situation. Originally, Noah was just hiding in a corner, intending to observe Aoko and Yuju. In the end, unexpectedly, a puppet suddenly pounced on Noah, who was hiding in the pile of stones. Noah, who had the sensing ability, naturally couldn't be ambushed, but he reflexively kicked the puppet away. Therefore, as the puppet fell in front of Aoko and Yuju, Noah was also exposed. However, that puppet should be controlled by a magician. Noah thoughtfully touched his chin. And the two men with the split mouth who attacked Yuju last night. It seems that Sanyi City is more chaotic than I thought. Chapter 296. Ha. 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 Aoko, who had exhausted a lot of stamina from running, couldn't help but gasp for air. She tugged at the collar of her down jacket and scanned her surroundings. Where did he go? Why didn't the barrier react? Although Aoko didn't know what exactly happened, she could guess it with a little bit of effort. Just now, there must have been a third person hiding in the dark. For some reason, he got rid of the automaton and then turned to run. Needless to say, there must be a magician controlling the automaton, and that magician was the person Aoko and Yuju were going to deal with tonight. But now, it was one thing for the owner of the doll to not appear. At most, it would mean that the owner had sent the doll out to fool Aoko and Yuju. But what was up with this other person who had mysteriously jumped out of nowhere? The barrier didn't react, right? In other words, there was no magic on the other party. Could it be that the person who got rid of the automaton was an ordinary person? Aoko, who had such a thought in her mind, felt her heart turn cold. Aoko wasn't surprised that an ordinary person got rid of an automaton controlled by a magician. After all, automatons were similar to familiars. They both served their masters and were objects of their masters. However, there were strong and weak familiars. The strong ones, like the giant controlled by Yuju, where at least 80 to 90% of magicians couldn't do anything to it. The weak ones, like the gray starling, were only used for detection, but their strength was not much stronger than ordinary birds. If they were caught, they could be crushed in minutes. It was the same for automatons. It wasn't strange that an ordinary person could get rid of them. It was because of this that Noah, who didn't release his power, was able to send it flying with a kick and let it smash into pieces without much effort. Damn it! Aoko clenched her fists and stood up in anger. It better not be an ordinary person. Aoko had never killed anyone before. Tonight, she was determined to kill the intruder, but who would have thought that such an episode would happen? If the person he was killing was magician, it would be fine. After all, both sides were gambling with their lives. But to kill ordinary people in order to hide the existence of magic, that would be harming the innocent. Aoko Aozaki was not a person with a strong sense of justice. But at the same time, Aoko Aozaki wasn't someone who would disregard human lives. No matter what, Aoko Aozaki was just an ordinary human 2 years ago. Therefore, Aoko's first reaction was to resist such a method. It better not be an ordinary person. Aoko could only pray. Noah, who was hiding in a nearby alley, saw Aoko's anxious appearance and a smile flashed across his eyes. Just as he was about to hide in the dark, he suddenly stopped. Hoo-hoo. At this moment, the two black shadows were like rapidly bouncing rubber balls. With a swift and fierce sound of wind, they rose and fell a few times, streaking across space, and pounced towards Noah who had his back facing them. Slap! Without the slightest hesitation, Noah stomped hard on the ground and dodged aside by a hair's breadth. Gotcha! Gotcha! This was the sound of a huge beast opening and closing its mouth full of sharp teeth. The two ball-like black shadows suddenly fell on the spot where Noah was just a moment ago. Their bodies began to split evenly from the middle and turned into two sharp crocodiles. They bit down viciously at Noah's position, causing some sparks to fly. If Noah had stayed in that place just now, he would definitely have been bitten by the two sharp mouths of the crocodiles in front of him, regardless of the consequences. Noah, who had steadied himself, finally saw the full appearance of the two black shadows. They had the appearance of pigs, but their bodies were covered with stitches and stitches like dolls. Their bodies were about 1 meter long. He dodged it. He dodged it. He dodged it. The two little pigs were suspended in midair. Their bodies were moving back and forth without any pattern. Two noises could be heard from their bodies. How could he dodge it? How could he run? Wouldn't it be better if he let us eat him? Wouldn't it be better if he let us bite him? Master is going to scold us for being useless again. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. Noises that were comparable to noises kept coming out from the two little pigs who were talking to themselves, which surprised Noah a little. Are these also familiars? Just as the voice fell, a burst of chaotic footsteps came from afar, making Noah's heart feel bad. He quickly wanted to leave. Don't go. Don't go. Don't go. Don't go. The two noisy piglets jumped down from the air and blocked Noah's path, making Noah helplessly stop. The sound of footsteps came to an abrupt end. You. Aoko, who was standing at the entrance of the alley, looked at Noah who was blocked by the two piglets. Her pale eyes first flashed with a touch of astonishment, followed by disbelief, and finally turned into coldness and awareness. She looked straight at Noah, her pretty face congealed, and her voice was emotionless. I didn't expect it to be you, Noah-san, your luck is really bad. Noah, who had seen Aoko adjust her emotions in a short time, felt admiration and helplessness in his heart. In the end, was he still exposed? Of course, for Noah, it was best if he could not expose his identity. Even if he did, it was not a big deal. Therefore, Noah relaxed his body and very casually greeted Aoko. "Hello, President." It was as if he had met an acquaintance by chance on the road, extremely natural. This infuriated Aoko Aozaki. "Yes, I am very good, very good." Aoko's expression gradually became cold. "But, unfortunately, Noah-san, you are not very good." "You are wrong, President." Noah shrugged. "I will be very good, even if someone is not good. It is not destined to be me." While saying this, Noah tilted his head and looked behind Aoko. "Could it be that Miss Yuju also wants me to be bad?" Under Noah's gaze, Yuju, whose whole body was wrapped in pitch-black clothes, slowly walked over. Her pair of dark eyes were as empty as before, and she was firmly silent, not saying a word. Coming. We are going to be scolded. We are going to be scolded." The little piglets, who were like rubber balls, immediately did a somersault in the air and bounced back to Yuju's side. They floated to the left and right of Yuju's body, twisting their fat bodies restlessly. "You can't blame us. You can't scold us. It's not that we are useless. It's not that we are not good. It's just that the human is too cunning." Yuju seemed to have grown impatient with the two little pigs squawking beside her ears. She closed her eyes, and the two little pigs' voices immediately followed her body. Like mist, they disappeared without any warning. Then, Yuju reopened her eyes and looked at Noah. "You are the person from last night?" Hearing Yuju's words, Aoko was stunned for a moment. Then, she reacted and looked at Noah with a sinister expression. "You are also a magician?" Hearing this, Noah raised his eyebrows and smiled. Bang! As if a dam that had been blocked for a long time was opened in an instant, the stormy waves of magic turned into a torrential airflow, bursting out from Noah's body. The surging magic airflow turned into a gust of wind. The gust of wind turned into a storm. The storm turned into a substantial impact, suddenly attacking in all directions, stirring up a thick cloud of dust, spreading like thunder. Aoko and Yuju, one was shocked, the other was shocked. They both raised their hands and blocked in front of themselves. The way they looked at Noah had changed. Is this magic? Impossible, right? Can a human have such a degree of magic? While the black-clothed Yuju was shocked, she finally confirmed the identity of the other party. This magic aura, Yuju could not be wrong. It was exactly the same as the person who had a short confrontation with Yuju last night and saved her life. Aoko bit her lips and stared at Noah. With such a strong magic, how did he manage to deceive the detection of the barrier? Chapter 297. The creator of Sanyo City's barrier wasn't Aoko or Yuju, but the Aoko family, Aoko's grandfather, who was responsible for managing the spirit vein in Sanyo City. The Aoko family was responsible for managing the spirit vein in Sanyo City, so they were very good at managing the spirit vein and resisting outsiders. In addition, the creator of Sanyo City's barrier was the previous manager of the spirit vein in the Aoko family. In theory, if it wasn't a magician more capable than Aoko's grandfather, then it was impossible to break the barrier in Sanyo City. However, the more outstanding a magician was, the more difficult it was to completely hide their magic power. Not to mention, Noah, who casually squandered his magic power and released it in the most wasteful way for no reason, had a smile on his face, but in terms of magic power, he was already inhumanly strong. With such a degree of magic power, it would be very difficult to hide even a part of it. Aoko and Yuju didn't believe that such magic power could be hidden so perfectly in such a sensitive barrier. Even Aoko, who they met almost every day at school, didn't notice it. Of course, the two girls didn't know that Noah actually didn't have a way to completely hide his magic power, or rather, Noah didn't know how to hide his magic power at all. The reason why Noah was able to hide his magic power was only because of the ability of limit, which shielded and buried the sealed power. If he hadn't come to this world, Noah wouldn't have known that limit had such an additional ability. Therefore, Noah's answer to Aoko's words was also the same. It's just a little trick, President Sama, don't mind it. Aoko wanted to refute Noah, but in the end, she held back. Yuju didn't move and didn't say anything more. In any case, it was a fact that this boy of the same age was an enemy. It was useless to say anything more. Stomp. With a loud stomp, Aoko suddenly took a step back and stretched out her hand to Noah. Connect. Like a spell, the word Aoko spat out directly turned into a key and opened the power in Aoko's body. As a result, the light of a magic engraving once again bloomed from Aoko's arm. Hum. A mechanical sound similar to that of an engine echoed from the arm that was emitting an ominous azure light. Witnessing all this happened, the smile on Noah's face gradually disappeared, and after a long while, he sighed. You really chose to make a move? Shut up. Aoko pointed her hand at Noah as if she was pointing a gun at him. She yelled angrily. I've been wanting to give you a good beating for a long time. The patterns bullet, SSS gun, S revolu S. For SS, the S in SSS, SSS, bang, 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 bang. In the next moment, the sound was almost the same as the sound of a gun, but it was unusually loud, and turned into an echo. Accompanied by the faint blue light, it rubbed against the air, cut through space, and violently shot out. The faint blue flashes were extremely bright and dazzling light bullets. Or it could be called magic bullet. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. In the sharp sound of breaking through the air, the faint blue magic bullet turned into a faint blue light, and mercilessly fell in Noah's direction. His vision was filled with phosphorescent light. Looking at the magic bullet rapidly approaching, Noah just calmly raised his hand. Hum. The scabbard that released a golden light flashed from Noah's hand, and in the light, it disintegrated into pieces of dreamlike crystal, forming a beehive-like barrier in front of Noah. The faint blue magic bullet heavily landed on the dreamlike barrier. Bang, 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 bang. In the midst of the muffled sound, the light bullets formed by magic power exploded on the dreamlike barrier, turning into beautiful blue sparks, stirring up bursts of smoke and dust, and beautifully dissipating like fireworks. No way. Aoko, whose arm was still flickering with faint blue light, was stunned. It was not that Aoko was very confident in her magic bullet. She had already expected that the magic bullet alone wouldn't have much of an effect against an opponent with such a vast amount of magic power. However, Aoko really didn't expect that it would be completely ineffective. Aoko, don't be impulsive. On the side, the motionless Yuju frowned, and stared at the dreamlike barrier in front of Noah. That's not an ordinary wall, you can't break it. Wall? Aoko was startled. Oh. Did you notice? Noah, whose whole body was protected by the dreamlike crystal barrier, slightly raised the corner of his mouth. That's right. It's a wall. Wall. The scabbard's protection was indeed a wall. On the surface, the scabbard's barrier seemed to be able to block all incoming attacks, but in fact, the scabbard's real power was not blocking, but isolating. You should have heard of it, right? Noah's voice slowly drilled into Aoko and Yoju's ears. This is a noble artifact called Avalon. Noble artifact? Aoko's expression changed. Unlike Aozaki Aoko, Yuju reacted to the word Avalon and suddenly raised her head. Avalon. Legend has it that it was the eternal spring of King Arthur, and its true form was the scabbard that was crowned with the name Fairyland. Not only was it able to completely heal the user of any degree of injury, it could even stop the aging of the human body. If its true name was released, it could also be broken into hundreds of pieces to protect the owner from any interference. In terms of individual combat, it could be called a mobile fortress. Yuju was right. Avalon did not block all incoming attacks, but it placed Noah in the middle of Fairyland, isolating and excluding all external physical interference, just like a wall. It was a noble artifact that had reached the realm of a magic, the strongest protection in this world. Therefore, what Gaia and Alea bestowed upon Noah was not an extremely powerful strength, nor was it an invincible weapon. Instead, it was absolute safety. With Avalon, no matter which world it was, as long as Noah's magic was not exhausted, there was almost no threat to his life. So, there's no point in continuing the fight. Noah looked straight at Aoko and Yuju, spreading his hands. I won't continue to play with you. Leaving such a sentence, Noah casually waved at Aoko and Yuju as if he was bidding farewell to a friend, turned around and walked to the other side of the alley. Wait. Aoko was about to call out to Noah, but was stopped by Yuju. It's useless. Yuju was like a statue. She did not have any expression, nor did she move. She only said those words. We're in trouble, Aoko. Aoko could not help but move her lips, but in the end, she could not say anything. Facing Avalon, which could be said to be the strongest guardian and mobile fortress in this world, Aoko and Yuju were helpless. Not to mention other things, just the existence of a noble artifact was not something that a normal magician could deal with. If the other party wanted to seize Sanyo City's spiritual vein, they could just swagger around and destroy the barrier of Sanyo City. Once the owner of the barrier was changed to someone else, Sanyo City's spiritual vein would no longer belong to Aoko and Yuju. Let's go back and think of a way to deal with it. Yuju's words were concise and to the point. This will be the biggest problem we've ever faced. Aoko nodded with a heavy heart, many thoughts flashing through her mind. Unfortunately, although Aoko had many thoughts in her mind, she did not think that Noah would not seize the spiritual vein. If Aoko knew that Noah didn't even know how to use the spirit vein, what kind of expression would she have? Chapter 298. The next day, Noah, who was sitting in his seat in the classroom, was still the same as yesterday. He gave a big yawn. His face didn't show any signs of fatigue, but it was unusually lazy. However, after he finished yawning, Noah opened his eyes and was shocked by the scene in front of him. A group of 2A students, led by Torimaru, were gathered in front of Noah. Their faces were very serious, as if they were discussing the upcoming end of the world. Their bodies were emitting a strong pressure. Noah admitted that he, who was not afraid of anything, was now scared by a group of ordinary students. Because they were too stupid, Noah was worried that he might be infected. Sigh. Noah sighed and narrowed his eyes. I'll give you 3 seconds to clearly state your intentions. 1, 2, how was it yesterday? Torimaru seemed to represent the voice of the entire 2A. He couldn't wait to ask. Did you really go on a date with Aochi? Torimaru, I found that your brain has become stupid. Noah said snappily. Please think about it carefully. Would the Aochi in your heart really invite me on a date? This sentence, as if it was the truth, shook the hearts of all the students present. That's right, that's right. That's the student council president. The student council president who would even say, aren't you guys hot, when he sees those couples stuck together in school. How could he be interested in love? That's right. You're right. Torimaru scratched his head. His voice returned to its usual rough and powerful tone. Then why did Aochi ask you to go out yesterday? Pulling weeds. Noah answered truthfully. What did you say? Torimaru was stunned. Pulling weeds. Noah repeated expressionlessly. In this world, there is a very tenacious life form called grass. Although strictly speaking, they are not harmful, once their numbers increase, they will evolve into weeds. At this time, people have to pull them out. This action is called weeding. I'm not asking you what pulling weeds is. Itamaru couldn't help but slam the table and stand up, shouting at Noah. You don't think I'm stupid, do you? Noah's gaze suddenly became very inconceivable, as if he was saying, isn't that so, which hurt Itamaru's heart. I'm the vice president of the student council. Itamaru couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed Noah's neck and shook him. Noah. Tell me. Say I'm not an idiot. If you continue to choke me, even if you're not an idiot, you'll become a murderer. Noah's weak voice entered Atamaru's ears, which made him even more agitated. Actually, with Atamaru's strength, let alone choke Noah to death, he couldn't even make Noah have difficulty breathing. However, Noah didn't hate this kind of interaction with his classmates. It made him feel very relaxed. Only at this time, Noah would forget that he had the strength to casually choke anyone around him to death. He would enjoy peace as an ordinary person. Even if this peace only lasted for a moment. Bang! At a certain moment, the door of the two-way classroom was pushed open, making a loud sound. Her handsome figure swayed with her black hair. She ignored the surrounding students who had shut their mouths and fled in panic. Her gaze swept in Noah's direction. She looked at Noah, whose neck was being choked by Atamaru, and walked over. The person who came was naturally Aoko Aozaki. Seeing Aoko Aozaki walking in his direction without hesitation, Noah put away the lazy expression on his face and became a bit cynical. As for Atamaru, it was as if he was scared silly and forgot to move. After a while, he woke up and quickly retracted his hand from Noah's neck. He acted as if nothing had happened and dodged to the side. In the classroom, only Aoko Aozaki's unusually loud footsteps could be heard. Not long after, it disappeared into the air. Just like yesterday, Aoko Aozaki stood in front of Noah's seat and looked down at him. Her eyes were still fierce, but there was a trace of intense emotions that only Noah could see. After all, yesterday was different from today. Yesterday, Aoko Aozaki came to see a classmate. Today, Aoko Aozaki came to see an enemy. Noah classmate. Aoko Aozaki said straightforwardly. Do you have time after school? Even the opening words were the same as yesterday. However, no one noticed that there was an unknown change. Under the admiring and curious gazes of the students led by Atamaru, Noah smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. Does the student union president want to invite me on a date? Still, it was exactly the same. But this time, Aoko Aozaki's response was like a big bad wolf trying to lure a rabbit to open the door. It was cunning and evil. It's not just me. Even my roommate wants to have a memorable date with you. When this was said, the classroom was dead silent. What did this mean? Buy one get one free? Speaking of which, was this really a date? The students looked at Noah as if they were worshipping a god. As expected, transfer students were all legends. Only Noah understood the meaning behind Aoko Aozaki's words. It seemed that Aoko Aozaki and Yuju had either found a way to deal with Avalon, or they were planning to negotiate with Noah. As for Avalon, as the strongest guardian in the world, it was hard to say whether there was a way to deal with it, let alone finding a way to deal with it. Therefore, compared to the former, Noah felt that the latter was more likely. I can't go on a date with two beautiful girls at the same time. Although he said this, Noah's face became a half-smile. I hope the president and Miss Yuju will have mercy on me. Aoko Aozaki glared at Noah, turned her head, swung her waist-length hair, and walked out of the classroom without looking back. After school, stay in the classroom and wait for me. After saying this, Aoko Aozaki disappeared from the classroom door. Wow! Almost at the same time, all the students of 2A swarmed over and surrounded Noah. They started chattering, almost squeezing Uemaru out of the crowd. Uemaru was so angry that the veins on his forehead were about to explode. In the crowd, Noah glanced at the direction Aoko Aozaki left in. Ignoring the chattering idiots around him, he tried to figure out what Aoko Aozaki and Yuju were thinking. Just like the day before, Noah and Aoko walked on the ramp leading to the White Dog tomb in the manor house. It seemed like they would never finish walking on top of the hill. However, it was different from yesterday. This time, Noah and Aoko Aozaki did not exchange a single word. They walked up the ramp in silence and arrived in front of the old iron fence. Screech! The iron fence was pushed open with a whining sound. Noah and Aoko Aozaki walked into the courtyard and slowly walked along the tree-lined path in front of the manor house. It was only then that Aoko Aozaki coldly spoke. Let me make it clear. That manor house was left to Yuju by her father. Yuju treasures that manor house very much. I only got the right to stay there temporarily. Yuju has always hated people entering her manor. Therefore, you have to be prepared for Yuju's mood to change. Hearing this, Noah calmly replied. It's okay. If that's the case, my mood might change at any time. When the time comes, I will leave on my own. Then, Yuju and I will be in a better mood, right? Aoko Aozaki's eyes twitched slightly as she sighed in her heart. That's true. This time, the one who had the initiative was not someone else, but this transfer student who had no way to deal with. No matter how the conversation developed, Noah, who was in an undefeatable position, was the stronger party. The ones who should compromise were Aoko Aozaki and Yuju, not Noah. If Noah really left at that time, Aoko's mood would definitely be very bad, regardless of whether Yuju's mood would be good or not. Aoko Aozaki could only hope that Yuju could control herself. However, what happened next gave Aoko Aozaki a headache. In front of the manor house, a dark-skinned girl was holding a book and reading it expressionlessly. If it wasn't Yuju, who else could it be? Does Yuju want to talk outside the manor house? Aoko Aozaki felt her head start to hurt. Chapter 299. The sunset glow shone down from the sky like a beautiful gauze dress draped over the girl's body. The dark girl stood in front of the main entrance of the mansion like a tourist waiting for the arrival of the train. She lowered her head and quietly looked at the book in her hand. At first glance, she looked like a statue. If it weren't for the girl moving her fingers from time to flip through the book in her hand, no one would be able to sense the slightest sign of life from her body and would mistake her for a real puppet or statue. Not to mention Noah, who was a man. Even Aoko, who was a woman, was dazed for a moment and was almost attracted by the girl's fatal beauty. Even Noah's gaze was taken away and involuntarily fixed on the girl's body. However, this quiet beauty didn't last long. As if she felt Noah's gaze, Yuju slightly raised her head without the slightest warning. Her black eyes suddenly met with Noah's equally dark pupils. The man and woman's eyes were both darker than the night. However, one was as dark as the stars, while the other was as intoxicating as the moonlight. At this moment, it seemed that only the man and woman were left in the whole world, causing the air to be filled with a sense of oppressive silence. Although they had only met twice, and both times were in the form of battle or confrontation, it wasn't difficult for Noah to see that Yuju was a girl of few words. Therefore, needless to say, it wasn't that Yuju didn't know what to say, but that she had long been accustomed to silence and didn't feel the slightest bit uncomfortable with silence. Thus, if no one spoke first, Yuju would definitely remain silent until all the time was wasted, right? As for Noah, he was simply patient. Seeing that Yuju didn't intend to express anything, he was too lazy to say anything and didn't feel too awkward. However, Noah and Yuju didn't care about being silent, but it didn't mean that Aoko didn't care. As you can see, Yuju, I've brought her. Without the slightest hesitation, Aoko broke the strange silence in a swift and decisive manner. She looked at Yuju with undisguised sharpness in her pale eyes. Shouldn't we go in now? Or do you plan to talk here? Aoko Aozaki's voice was filled with reproach. Don't think that Aoko and Yuju live together because of their good relationship. In fact, the two of them lived together because they had the same interests. The spiritual vein in Sano City has always belonged to the Aozaki family. Of course, in Aoko's generation, the spirit vein in Sano City naturally became the property of Aoko. As mentioned before, there were 3 ways for a magician to obtain the power of a spirit vein. Apply for a loan from the Magic Association. Coordinate with the owner of the spirit vein. Snatching a ready-made spirit vein. Yuju had stayed in Sanyo City through the second route, sharing the spirit vein of Sanyo City with Aoko Aozaki. Only Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki knew exactly how they coordinated their relationship, and what kind of twists and turns there were in between. However, it was certain that the two of them didn't live together because they had a good relationship. Magicians were a group of existences without any moral values in the world. As long as there was enough reason, they wouldn't hesitate to kill even biological sisters. Now, as the manager of the spirit vein in Sano City, Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki had to negotiate with Noah, who they couldn't do anything about but couldn't ignore. Otherwise, neither of them would feel at ease. If Yuju Aozaki Aoko really rejected the person she had to deal with because of her personal feelings, causing the matter to reach a deadlock, then Aozaki Aoko would have enough reason to make things difficult for her cohabitant. Even if this cohabitant was Aozaki Aoko's friend and a magic instructor. Aozaki Aoko's power was nothing to Yuju Aozaki Aoko. Therefore, this time, it was Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki Aoko's turn to look at each other, falling into an indescribable silence. Yuju fearlessly responded to Aoko's piercing gaze, her expression not changing in the slightest. After a while, Yuju Aozaki Aoko turned her head and looked at Noah, who didn't say anything. After a long time, she finally turned around and pushed open the door of the mansion. From the beginning to the end, Yuju Aozaki Aoko didn't say a single word. However, the moment Yuju Aozaki Aoko turned around, both Noah and Aozaki Aoko could feel the unfriendly aura emanating from Yuju Aozaki Aoko. Obviously, Yuju Aozaki Aoko was really unhappy about letting Noah enter the mansion. This also meant that Aozaki Aoko was right. Yuju Aozaki Aoko really treasured this mansion. Sigh. Aozaki Aoko sighed tiredly. Her attitude towards Noah had become more or less impatient. Let's go. We'll talk after I've dealt with you. What do you mean by, we'll talk after I've dealt with you? Noah rolled his eyes and didn't bother to pay attention to Aozaki Aoko. He walked forward and entered the mansion on his own. As soon as he entered the mansion, Noah felt a sense of dissonance that was completely different from the outside. In every corner of the manor house, there was a trace of magical aura permeating the air. It was the magical aura that came from the earth spirit vein in Sano City. It wasn't until he sensed that even the air was filled with magical aura that Noah was able to clearly see the interior of the mansion. What entered his eyes was the main hall of the mansion. It was a very classical manor house. The floor was made of wooden bricks. Instead of saying that the walls were white, it was more accurate to say that they were gray. Almost none of the furniture around him had a modern appearance. They were either wooden tables and chairs or ancient clocks. There wasn't even a single fluorescent lamp. It felt like they had entered another world. The ceiling reached all the way to the top. Not only was half of it occupied by a huge glass window, but it was also higher than the second floor. The sunlight shone in from the outside, and at least it didn't make people feel cold. Yuju Aozaki Aoko didn't wait for Noah and Aozaki Aoko to enter. She opened the door on the left side of the hall and let Noah see a corridor that was as dark as a basement. Yuju Aozaki Aoko walked into the corridor and directly opened the door closest to her and entered. It was a living room with luxurious sofas and carpets, but it also had a very out-of-place TV, which made Noah feel out of place in another way. Aozaki Aoko ignored Noah's strange expression and walked in slowly and sat next to Yuju, who was already sitting on the sofa. Originally, it's rare to have guests here, so I should make you a cup of tea. But because I don't know if the meeting will end well or not, I don't want to do that kind of meaningless thing. Aozaki Aoko's expression changed into a serious one. Although it's a bit late to say this, can we talk? Noah curled his lips and walked into the living room. He sat opposite Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki and looked into the eyes of the two girls. I know what you want to talk about. Then you should also know how troublesome your existence is for us. Aozaki Aoko stared at Noah while Yuju remained silent. Say it, what do you want? When she said this, Aozaki Aoko and Yuju were destined to fall into a passive situation. However, there was no other way. This time, they were really passive. Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki did not have the means to deal with Noah. If Noah really coveted Sanyo City's spiritual vein, he could ignore Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki. Anyway, with the protection of Avalon, Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki could not touch a single hair on Noah's head. In this way, Noah could directly tamper with or even directly destroy the barrier of Sanyo City and build a new one of his own. Then, the ownership of Sanyo City's spiritual vein would be transferred to Noah's hands and no longer belong to Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki. There was no way to deal with it. There was no way to just watch. Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki could only choose to negotiate with Noah. Noah naturally understood this. However, Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki made a mistake. I don't know if you will choose to believe me, but I'll make it clear to you. Under the gazes of the two girls, Noah said with a smile. Who told you that I'm here to seize Sanyo City's spiritual vein? Aozaki Aoko and Yuju Aozaki were stunned. Chapter 300. What do you mean by that? Aoko loosened her arms and stared at Noah as if she was trying to find a flaw in Noah's expression. You're not here for the spirit vein? If you're not here for the spirit vein, what are you doing in Sanyo City? Are you trying to tell me that you're here to experience the life of a high school student? Aoko said this in a mocking tone, but there was an indescribable seriousness in her expression. Although Yuju was still expressionless, her brows were slightly furrowed. Aoko and Yuju weren't ordinary people. Even without their identity as magicians, they believed that no one would underestimate them. And now, their instincts were telling them that they had walked into a huge misunderstanding from the beginning. Therefore, Aoko and Yuju wanted to see something from Noah's expression, but Noah's calm expression only brought them disappointment. Therefore, Noah only used one sentence to block all of Aoko and Yuju's guesses. Do you think I have a need to lie? Aoko and Yuju instantly exchanged glances. That's right. Noah had no need to lie. This was because even if Noah frankly expressed that he wanted to obtain the spirit vein in Sanyo City, Aoko and Yuju couldn't do anything about it. In that case, did Noah have a need to lie? President, do you remember what I said when we first met in the student union office? Noah looked at Aoko with a spurious smile. I said that I came to Sanyo City by chance. Aoko subconsciously wanted to refute, but she couldn't find a reason or evidence to refute. Aoko gritted her teeth. Since you're not here for the spirit vein, you should leave Sanyo City. This is our territory. Strictly speaking, Aoko didn't own Sanyo City, but the spirit vein in Sanyo City. Naturally, Aoko didn't have the right to chase away outsiders. But that was only limited to ordinary people. If the person who came to Sanyo City was an ordinary person, then Aoko wouldn't be able to control him. However, if the person who came was a magician, then it was different. As the manager of Sanyo City's spiritual vein, foreign magicians couldn't stay in Sanyo City unless they reached an agreement with Aoko. Even if foreign magicians did not use the spiritual veins in Sanyo City, it would still be the same. In response, Noah directly retorted with a single sentence. Since that's the case, please exercise your authority as the manager of the spirit vein and chase me out. How about that? Aoko Aozaki was furious. Drive him out? If she had the ability to drive Noah out, then with Aoko's character, she would not have talked so much nonsense with Noah. Aren't you worried that I will secretly do something to the spirit vein and boundary of Sanyi City? That's why you have no choice but to come and negotiate with me, right? Noah had a funny expression on his face as he shrugged. I've already told you that I have no interest in the spirit vein in Sanyi City. You don't have to worry anymore, right? Don't have to worry? Who wouldn't be worried? Not to mention whether it was true or not, even if it was true, who would be at ease to let a magician that they couldn't control stay in their territory? Who could guarantee that this magician did not have any other motives? Who could guarantee that this magician would not suddenly launch an attack from behind at the crucial moment and kill him? After all, to put it nicely, magicians were a group of mystical scholars, but to put it bluntly, they were just a group of lunatics who would do anything to achieve their goals, that is, to reach the source of their power. Allowing a magician with unknown intentions to wander around his territory? At least, Aoko and Yuju, who couldn't accept people's kindness, couldn't do that. Why do you have to stay in Sanyo City? Aoko went straight to the point. Do you have a reason for staying here? Hearing this, Noah fell silent. In fact, even Noah himself did not know why he had to stay in Sanyo City. However, in Noah's heart, Noah had never considered leaving Sanyo City. Why was it like this? After asking himself, Noah gave such an answer. I only have one reason to stay here. Aoko and Yuju stood up solemnly at the same time. However, in the next moment, Noah's answer almost made the bad-tempered Aoko fly into a rage. Intuition. Noah suddenly smiled. Intuition tells me that I have to stay here. Only by staying here can I get what I want. Aoko's forehead suddenly had the word, well, printed on it, causing her to put on a fake smile. Noah, are you playing with me? I'm very serious. Noah leaned his body on the sofa and said leisurely. It depends on whether you believe it or not. In the living room, silence filled the air. Aoko's expression had already become somewhat uncertain. She obviously did not expect things to develop into such a difficult problem. After a while, she gave up and looked at Yuju. Yuju, what should we do now? Yuju was still silent. After a while, she stood up and walked out of the living room. Aoko understood and said to Noah. Wait for us here. After saying that, Aoko followed Yuju out of the living room. Not long after, a faint discussion could be heard from outside. It seems that in order to solve Noah's problem, Aoko and Yuju had already started a strategy meeting. In this case, Noah had no reason to be anxious. He sat there with a clear conscience and observed the surroundings. What made Noah puzzled was that for some reason, the discussion between Aoko and Yuju seemed to have turned into a dispute. Moreover, the quarrel was quite fierce. Even the voice of the taciturn Yuju could be heard faintly. The dispute was very fierce. In the end, it was unknown if the dispute had reached a conclusion, but the voice disappeared little by little. Then, footsteps began to sound, approaching the living room. When Aoko and Yuju appeared in front of Noah again, the expression of the two girls was completely different. Aoko had a satisfied expression on her face. Yuju was expressionless as usual, but her empty eyes were fixed on Noah the moment she entered the living room. To Noah's surprise, there was obvious emotion in Yuju's eyes. Dissatisfaction. Yuju was very dissatisfied. We agree to let you stay in Mayo City, but we also have our conditions. Aoko opened the following negotiation with such a sentence. Don't be in a hurry to refuse. We also know that we don't have the qualifications to make conditions with you now, but after all, you are living in our territory. We will treat you as a foreign magician who wants to rent a spiritual vein from us. Aoko gave Noah an unusually sweet smile. Or is Noah the kind of evil guest who will occupy other people's residence and not pay rent? Hearing this, Noah raised his eyebrows. Since you have said so, fine, let's hear it. Our conditions are very simple. Aoko's smile became more and more sweet, but also more and more dangerous. Noah classmate, we hope to know your whereabouts, and always know. Otherwise, we won't be able to feel at ease. Oh. Noah slightly narrowed his eyes. You mean, you want to spy on me? No. Aoko straightforwardly shook her head, but her answer made Noah stunned. We want you to live here. What did you say? Noah was stunned. Live here? That's right. Aoko nodded heavily. Only when you are under our eyes can we feel at ease. Noah finally understood why Yuju was so dissatisfied. This was Yuju's most precious manner. Now that it was invaded by an outsider, of course Yuju would be dissatisfied. If it wasn't for the fact that Noah's problem couldn't be ignored, Yuju wouldn't have agreed to this proposal. And this time, it was Noah's turn to be hesitant. Live with Aoko and Yuju? Aoko didn't seem to care about the problem of the opposite sex living under the same roof as she crossed her arms. This is our bottom line. Hearing this, Noah understood. For Aoko and Yuju, he was not a man, but a magician. Chapter 301. This is your room. Aoko opened a door that was covered in a thin layer of dust. It seemed like it had not been cleaned for a while. Aoko moved aside slightly to let Noah enter Noah's line of sight. Noah replaced Aoko and came to the door. He had a panoramic view of the world behind the door. It was a very ordinary but somewhat strange room. Ordinary referred to the size and scale of the room. In terms of size and scale, it was no different from a normal room. Strange referred to the furniture. There was only one bed in the room, and it was a rather high-end mahogany bed. Putting such a high-end bed in an ordinary room, there was indeed an indescribable sense of strangeness. However, there were many rooms like this in the manor house. Yoju's manor house was very large. In terms of scale, it was larger than a normal villa. Naturally, there were many empty rooms. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed a bit wasteful for two single girls to live in such a large manor house. After all, even the rich children who could afford to live in such a large manor house would have maids and servants who specialized in cleaning their houses. However, in this manor house, there was no third person other than Aoko and Yuju. Of course, it was a bit wasteful to live in it. However, from today onwards, Noah would also be a resident of this manor house. If you're not satisfied, don't complain. The empty rooms in the manor are all similar. Some of them are even used by Yuju and me as storage rooms and study rooms. Aoko brushed her waist-length hair and turned a blind eye as she spoke to Noah in an indifferent tone. By the way, this room is in the East Manor. My room is also in the East Manor, but it's on the other side. The West Manor is Yoju's territory. Even I can't enter without permission. You can't go there either. Otherwise, even if she knows that she can't do anything to you, Yuju will fight you to the death. By the way, do you want to go back to your original room and get your luggage? Perhaps because she felt that Noah's room was a bit desolate, Aoko seemed to kindly suggest this. However, this suggestion only earned Noah's annoyance. There's no need for that. I've only been in Sanyi City for the past 2 to 3 days. The things that I originally had in my residence were all provided in my apartment. Is that so? Aoko asked doubtfully. Don't we need to bring clothes and daily necessities? I do need to go back and get the clothes, but there are only a few of them. It's not a big deal. Noah walked into the room and sat on the bed. Feeling the softness of the high-end bed, he nodded with satisfaction. As for the daily necessities, I'll buy new ones tomorrow. Well, it's up to you. Aoko answered casually. But don't buy anything that you can't fit in your room. Otherwise, Yuju will definitely explode. So many restrictions? Are you looking for a cohabitant or a prisoner? Noah raised his head, his eyes full of hostility. Since you're so displeased with me, why do you want me to stay here? You're going all out and going all out. Do you think we want to? It's just that this is the best plan for now. Aoko's voice sounded a little helpless. Moreover, Yuju didn't agree to let you stay here. Even if you have to compromise, she must be very unhappy now. Maybe she's hiding somewhere and preparing to attack you. Attack me? Noah was a little stunned. Don't be fooled by Yuju. She's actually very childish. Not only does she get angry easily, but she's also easily controlled by personal feelings. Aoko glanced at Noah. I've agreed to let you stay here because it's necessary. It's not that easy to get Yoju's approval. Why do I have to work so hard to get her to acknowledge me? Noah's voice didn't sound depressed at all. It was as if Yoju's mood had nothing to do with him. You're the one who asked me to stay here. I'm only cooperating with you to avoid trouble. If living here will cause a lot of trouble, then I'm sorry, but I won't stay here. I think so too. Aoko Aoyagi showed a troubled expression, and her eyes were filled with hatred. I'm already so busy because of those foreign magicians, and now I have to worry about my 2 roommates. I must have been cursed. Hearing this, Noah became curious. Are there foreign magicians in Sanyo City? Noah had some guesses about the 2 men who attacked Yuju that night. He felt that it was very likely that they were foreign magicians who wanted to see Sanyo City's spiritual vein. Now it seemed that it wasn't just the 2 men from that night. There were obviously other foreign magicians in Sanyo City. Otherwise, who was the automaton that attacked Noah last night and was kicked away by Noah? The owner of the automaton was the one who wanted to see Sanyo City's spiritual vein and challenge Aoko and Yuju. Aoko subconsciously wanted to answer Noah's question, but when she remembered that Noah was also in the observation period, she immediately swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth and changed it to such a sentence. They're just magicians from all walks of life. We'll get rid of them very soon. After saying that, Aoko turned around and walked away without looking back. Dinner is after 8 o'clock. Just go straight to the living room. Also, don't go to the West Wing. There's already enough trouble. Don't add to it. After saying this, Aoko's figure disappeared from Noah's sight, accompanied by the sound of footsteps gradually fading away. Noah curled his lips and lay down on the bed. He closed his eyes and took a nap. On the other side, Aoko walked down the stairs and came to the hall on the 1st floor. She saw Yuju standing in front of the door to the West Wing, motionless like a real puppet. Perhaps she was in a daze. The hall on the 1st floor was through the front entrance of the mansion. In the hall on the 1st floor of the mansion, there were roughly 4 doors and a staircase. The door on the east side led to the living room. The door on the west side led to the West Wing where Yuju was. The door on the south side was the front entrance. There was a heater on the north side, and next to the heater was the stairs to the 2nd floor. The last door was behind the stairs, which was the door to the bathroom. At this time, Yuju was standing in front of the door to the West Wing. Aoko looked at Yuju, who was standing there motionlessly. Aoko walked down the stairs with powerful steps and spoke unintentionally. His room has been arranged. It's at the end of the corridor on the 2nd floor. As if she didn't hear Aoko's words, Yuju still didn't move at all. She looked straight ahead as if she didn't want to know about Noah at all. However, Aoko, who had been with Yuju for about 2 years, smiled meaningfully and said this sentence in a teasing manner. The idea of letting him stay, at first I was just saying it casually, Yuju. Yoju's empty eyes flickered for a moment. Although keeping him right under our noses can prevent him from doing anything that we can't see, it's still very risky. After all, we're basically burying a bomb that could explode at any time right next to us, Aoko Aozaki said. Plus, this manor house has a special meaning to you, Yuju. Originally, I thought this proposal would be rejected, but I didn't expect you to suddenly agree after protesting for a while. Can you tell me why? Yes. I agree. In fact, Yuju had already agreed to let Noah live in this mansion. Although she wasn't completely dissatisfied, she wasn't forced to do so, as Aoko said. At least, from Aoko's point of view, with Yoju's dedication to this mansion, there was no way she would agree to let an outsider live here just because it was necessary. Therefore, how could Aoko not be curious about Yoju's thoughts? Yuju didn't pay attention to Aoko. Aoko didn't know that at this very moment, the events of that night were slowly replaying in Yoju's mind. The battle with Noah, who hid his identity. The attack from the man with the fisher. And the moment when Noah stepped forward and saved Yuju. Chapter 302. In the living room of the manor house, there was a door that led to the outside. Behind the door was a sunroom. Both sides of the walls were covered by glass, and the ceiling was also made of glass. It was like an open-air cafe. Not only were there classical and elegant tables and chairs, but one could also see the courtyard outside the manor house through the glass. It was a pity that before this, only 2 single girls had lived in the manor house. Furthermore, both of them lacked the awareness to clean up. Therefore, now, the courtyard outside was filled with withered trees. It was as depressing as a wasteland. If Noah hadn't come here to pull the weeds yesterday, it would have been even more unsightly. What was even more disappointing was that the sunroom was also the manor house's dining room. Noah aside, Aoko and Yuju had always used the sunroom as a place to eat. When Noah found out about this, he was quite speechless. "I can't believe you can eat so happily while looking at that wasteland outside." Sitting at the table that served as a dining table in the sunroom, Noah sighed at Aoko Aozaki and Yuju Aozaki, who shared the same table on the other side. "It was such a good courtyard, but you wasted it just like that. Don't look at me. It was already like this when I moved in." Aoko didn't hesitate to draw the line. "Don't look at Yuju either. It's more difficult for Yuju to repair the courtyard than for her to date." Yuju drank her soup in silence. It was obvious that she didn't care about Aoko's words, nor did she care that the courtyard had become a wasteland. Although she loved the manor house very much, Yuju didn't look like an extremely diligent girl. If she had the time to do these things, he believed that Yuju would be more willing to spend it on magic research. Aoko was even more so. She had to go through a lot of trouble to find Noah to pull the weeds. It was impossible for her to do it herself. In other words, neither of you are good at dating, and you both think that it doesn't matter? Noah looked sympathetically at the 2 girls who would be living together from that day onwards. What a pity. If it were any other girl who heard this, they would definitely fly into a rage. However, in the ears of Aoko and Yuju, it didn't even have the slightest bit of meaning. The 2 of them minded their own business and ate their own food, causing Noah to be snubbed. By the way, the dining rules in the mansion were different from those in other places. Under normal circumstances, they worked in shifts. However, if someone was in a bad mood or had something to do, they could choose not to work and let the other residents in the manor do their own things. It was that casual. It was the same this time. Yuju, who came to the living room first, cooked for herself. Aoko Aochi, who came later, cooked for herself. By the time Noah arrived, the 2 had already started eating. They mercilessly told Noah to cook for himself. At this time, Aoko suddenly said to Yuju, "Yuju, let's continue with yesterday's homework after dinner." Hearing this, Yuju finally reacted. She raised her head and nodded at Aochi Aoko. Her quiet voice resounded in the sunlight room. "Yesterday, we were practicing the suggestion magic. According to the original plan, we were going to do another topic today. However, Aoko, you are even more clueless than I thought when it comes to non-destructive magic." What can I do?" Aoko said resentfully. "Who told me to be an apprentice magician with less than 2 years of experience?" "I don't think it has anything to do with time," Yuju replied unhurriedly. "After all, if it's a destructive magic, you can learn it very quickly." Aoko was at a loss for words. However, when Noah heard the conversation between Aoko and Yuju, he raised his head in surprise and looked at Aoko. "You're just an apprentice magician?" "What?" Aoko stared at Noah with a sinister expression. "Are you making fun of me? But that's not right." Noah didn't pay attention to Aoko's angry expression as he spoke in surprise. "I can feel that you are very special. There is a very powerful force hidden in your body. How can you be just an apprentice magician?" Once those words were spoken, Aoko and Yuju's expressions tightened. They looked at each other, and the gazes they used to look at Noah became serious. Aoko, in particular, had a gloomy look on her face. "The force you sensed, it can't be the magic in my body, right?" "Magic?" Noah was slightly startled and immediately looked pensive. As mentioned before, Noah's crush in this world can't be called magic. It can only be called magic. Because, in this world, magic and magic are different mysteries. Both of them have the same source of power, but there is a fundamental difference. No matter how much time and technology is used, it can't be realized. That is magic. And no matter how inconceivable it is, as long as there is time and technology, anyone can realize the mysteries. That is magic. For example, humans can make fire. Therefore, magic with the property of fire can never be called magic. Therefore, in simple terms, if human science can achieve the same phenomenon, it is magic. If it can't be achieved, it is magic. The reason why Noah's crush can't be called magic in this world is because of this difference. However, magic is not necessarily better than magic. After all, magic only refers to those mysteries that can't be achieved by human hands. It doesn't necessarily have powerful strength. Some powerful magic is even more qualified to be called magic. Of course, Noah's crush is different from the magic and magic of this world. One of them is the power of the sorcerer's soul, while the other is the power of the root of all things. They can't be lumped together. And according to the memories he obtained from Gaia and Alea, Noah also knew the truth of this world's magic. It is a method that magicians create or obtain in order to reach the root. Magic is the ultimate method to reach the root. If magicians can reach the root, then they can obtain magic. Similarly, if a magician develops magic, then they can reach the root. In other words, magic was the method left behind by those who had successfully reached the origin to reach the origin. You have magic? A thought arose in Noah's mind. He was startled and hurriedly asked Aoko about it. In other words, you have successfully reached the root? Unfortunately, as I said, I'm just an apprentice magician. Aoko said in a depressed tone. My magic is passed down from the Aozaki family. I have only inherited it. Moreover, I can't use it right now. Don't tell me you don't know about the magic of the Aozaki family? Yuju looked deeply at Noah. It is impossible for a magician to not know about the magic of the Aozaki family, right? Noah didn't answer Yuju's question. This was because Noah had a thought in his mind. If the feeling that Noah felt from Aoko's body was the same as that of Gaia and Alea's Snow White world was magic, then wouldn't that Snow White world be the location of the root? After all, magic is a mystery that directly leads to the root, isn't it? If that was the case, it would explain why Noah felt like a Snow White world from Aoko. But this doesn't make sense. If that Snow White world is the location of the root, then Noah can be considered to have successfully reached the root. If that's the case, then why didn't Noah obtain the magic of this world? With all these questions, Noah couldn't help but feel vexed. Seeing Noah's vexed appearance, Aoko and Yuju looked at each other again. Although they didn't know what Noah was thinking, just from the fact that Noah, as a magician, didn't know about the magic of the Aozaki family, Noah seemed a bit unusual. This cohabitant who had only started living in the manor house today had a lot of secrets. He had the legendary King Arthur's noble artifact. He was able to perfectly hide his magic. In addition, he had an abnormal reaction to magic. Who would think that Noah was ordinary? Of course, Aoko and Yuju didn't think that Noah wasn't a magician of this world. The cohabitation between the magician, and magician still had to continue. Chapter 303. As a result, Noah, who had stayed up until midnight because of the magic, was unable to come up with any constructive conjectures. Now, Noah was basically certain that the strange feeling he felt from Aoko's body was the magic of the Aozaki family. However, Noah was still unsure as to why the magic was able to give him the same feeling as when he was in the Snow White world. He was certain that the Snow White world was the location of the origin. No, it should be said that if Aoko's magic was proof that the Snow White world was the location of the origin, then the fact that Noah himself had been there but had not been able to obtain the magic negated this possibility. As a result, this matter smoothly entered a dead end. Unable to understand, Noah decided not to think about it and fell into a deep sleep as if he had given up. He slept all the way until dawn. In the morning, the white fog seemed to be able to freeze people as it carried a low temperature and filled the entire manor house. At dawn, Noah woke up from his sleep and felt the cold outside his blanket. Almost like any other ordinary person, he instantly had the thought of going back to sleep. However, this thought only flashed through his mind for a moment. After all, Noah was not an ordinary person. After all, even if his body's strength was suppressed to the level of an ordinary person by the limit ability, Noah had already gotten used to the cold. The 4 years of training in the deep mountains and forests had indeed benefited Noah a lot. It was also because of that period of time that Noah was able to cultivate such a strong adaptation to the surrounding environment. This bit of cold was not that difficult to endure for Noah. Gotcha. After putting on his Mitsubishi high school uniform, Noah opened the door and came out of his room. He yawned as he walked in the cold corridor under the low temperature. Other than a television, there were almost no other modern products in the beaded manor house. Naturally, there was also no heating, which made the winter in the manor house very difficult to endure. There was a heater in the lobby on the first floor of the manor house, but it was said to have been in use for at least a few years. Naturally, it wasn't used now. The interior of the mansion was very large. It had 3 floors, so there were many empty rooms in the mansion. If they were rented out, the owner of the mansion would definitely make a lot of money. The corridor was carpeted, and the surroundings were decorated with old furniture, making it look like a medieval castle. Although it was luxurious, it also gave people a sense of coldness and loneliness. The stairs leading to the lobby on the first floor were at the end of the corridor and in the middle of the hall. Walking down the stairs in the center of the hall, Noah came to the hall on the first floor of the hall with the unique click sound of the wooden stairs. Before he could finish walking down the stairs, Noah, who had reached the hall, suddenly paused. He seemed to have sensed something as he looked at the corner of the hall below through the railing of the stairs. There was a scene that would make people hold their breath. Beside the stove, a young girl dressed in a nun's black robe sat quietly with her legs spread out from her sitting position. She had an extremely beautiful posture of a young girl. Not only that, but the beautiful girl also leaned her body in the direction of the heater. Her eyes were closed, and her head was slightly lowered, as if she had fallen into a deep sleep. That's right, the girl was in a deep sleep. Although from the outside, she looked like a person who had no signs of life and was in a deep sleep, and she didn't move at all like a statue, Noah could still feel the girl's weak breathing. It was so weak that if one didn't get close, it would be impossible to detect it. Looking at Yuju, who was leaning against the heater and sleeping in a beautiful posture, Noah couldn't help but reveal an expression of amazement at this beautiful scene. However, a tranquil feeling emerged in his heart. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because even though Yuju's sleeping face was as expressionless as before, Noah could feel a sense of security emanating from Yuju at this very moment. Yes, Yuju was very at ease. Just like a child nestled in the arms of their parents, Yuju leaned against the heater as if she was sleeping in a cradle with her parents' soft whispers. There was an indescribable sense of security. Feeling that sense of security, Noah's gaze towards Yuju also revealed a very brief moment of gentleness. Aoko was right. Yuju treasured this manor very much, to the extent that she treated it as a cradle with her parents. Presumably, staying in this manor, Yuju should be able to feel the comfort of having her parents by her side at all times. That's why she was able to sleep so peacefully in the manor's hall. Of course, sitting on the ground like this in such a cold day, with a completely inactive heater, the low temperature would definitely make it impossible for anyone to sleep, unless they wanted to sleep and never wake up. However, Noah wasn't worried about this matter. After all, Yuju was a magician, so it shouldn't be too difficult for her to solve the problem of temperature, right? Thinking about this, Noah went down the stairs and came to the hall. He originally wanted to carry Yuju back to her room to sleep, but after thinking about it carefully, he gave up on that idea. Not to mention that Yuju's room was in the west wing. It was an area that even Aoko prohibited from going there for no reason. It was Yuju's territory. If Noah went there, he would definitely anger Yuju. Moreover, with Yuju's personality, she wasn't an ordinary girl who would accept the kindness of others. Not only would Yuju not accept the considerate actions of Noah, who had invaded her territory not long ago, but was now living in her most treasured manor. She would probably be angry because of this, right? Really, why are my roommates all so troublesome? Noah couldn't help but complain. In the absolute dual blades, Ivanli, Julie, and Lilith were all considered to have been Noah's roommates. One of them had an unstable personality, one was naive and pure, one was overconfident, and all of them were unpredictable. They never made Noah feel at ease for even a moment. Now, Aoko and Yuju didn't even need to be mentioned. One was naturally unwilling to admit defeat, while the other was silent and willful. How could Noah not complain? Casey. At this time, on the stairs, the unique sound of footsteps mixed with the wooden stairs sounded again. What are you doing here? Aoko's energetic voice sounded as she came down the stairs. When Aoko came to Noah's side and saw Yuju sleeping by the stove, she looked at Noah with a meaningful gaze. Is peeping at a girl's sleeping posture also one of your interests? I think it's not difficult for most people to imagine that I'm hesitating whether to wake up my roommate who is sleeping on the ground in this cold weather. Noah glanced at Aoko. Or is it your interest to deliberately neglect me? I'm just giving you a piece of advice. Don't think that just because Yuju is like that, you don't care about her sleeping face being seen by the opposite sex. Aoko brushed her waist-length hair and said intentionally or unintentionally. I can guarantee that if Yuju knew that you saw her sleeping face, she would be furious. Is that so? Noah said angrily. If that's the case, why would she sleep in such a conspicuous place? This is Yuju's mansion. She has the right to sleep wherever she wants. Aoko said disapprovingly. Besides, because of the foreign magician, Yuju was busy until very late yesterday. It's not strange that she was so tired that she fell asleep, right? What? Noah asked suspiciously. The foreign magician's matter hasn't been solved yet? Aoko frowned slightly and her eyes began to turn cold. That has nothing to do with you. It's the responsibility of a manager. From Aoko's expression, Noah could clearly feel her hostility. Obviously, Aoko didn't let down her guard against him. After all, on the surface, Noah was also a foreign magician. I really don't understand your thoughts. Noah sighed. You're so obviously hostile to me, and you're like a good person who reminds me that I didn't offend Yuju. Since you treat me as an enemy, why don't you hate me? As soon as this sentence came out, Aoko's eyes widened in an instant. Then, her eyes turned sharp. A faint blue light that represented magic bloomed from Aoko's body. Chapter 304. Wang. The magic seal on Aoko's arm emitted a sound that sounded like an engine, accompanied by a phosphorescent glow. Her magic power burned in the air like blue flames. Noah didn't expect Aoko's reaction to be so intense. His body tensed up as he gazed at Aoko, whose head was lowered and whose body was burning with magical power. At this time, Aoko slowly raised her head. Her expression was as cold as a machine, and her eyes were as sharp as knives, piercing straight into Noah's body. You said I have obvious hostility toward you? That I don't hate you? Aoyagi's voice carried a hint of regret as she said this. It was as if she was blaming herself for not noticing this before. Noah didn't understand why Aoko's reaction was so intense, but that didn't mean he would obediently endure her capriciousness. President Aoko, what do you mean? Unlike Aoko, Noah didn't mobilize his magical power. He stared straight at Aoko, releasing a powerful pressure from his body. Can I take your actions as meaning you want to start a war with me? Aoko clicked her tongue, but she did not retract her magic power. Instead, she stared at Noah, her pale eyes filled with an intense emotion that she had never felt before. Just as the tense atmosphere was about to explode, a cold and indifferent voice slowly reverberated. What are you doing? Following this sentence, Yuju slowly walked out from the shadows of the hall with a thick book in her hand. Although her words were directed at Noah and Aoko, Yuju's eyes were only on Aoko. "It's not like you to get angry for no reason, Aoko." Aoko fell silent. After a while, the engine-like sound and the blue phosphorescent light disappeared from Aoko's body. Aoko didn't even look at Noah and Yuju. With a somewhat ugly expression, she walked directly to the entrance, opened the door, and walked out. Watching Aoko's back disappear from the entrance, Noah frowned. "What's wrong with that guy?" Yuju also stared at the direction where Aoko disappeared, and after a while, she softly said, "What did you say to Aoko?" Noah pondered for a moment, and then revealed his conversation with Aoko to Yuju. After listening to Noah's recount, Yuju's empty eyes showed a touch of surprise. She thoughtfully touched her chin with her pale slender finger, and asked hesitantly, "Do you really think Aoko doesn't hate you?" "To be honest, there should be a lot of things about me that can cause that guy to hate me. I also think that guy should hate me." Noah was still frowning, puzzled after thinking about it for a long time. Or could it be that Miss President is like a good person who cares about that guy no matter how hateful he is? Then I can't guarantee that she won't hate me. Hearing Noah's words, Yuju slightly nodded, as if she understood something. After seeing Yuju's reaction, Noah asked, "Did I say something wrong that caused her reaction to be so intense?" "No." Yuju expressionlessly replied. "It should be said that your statement was too accurate, so accurate that even Qingzi himself didn't realize it. That was why Qingzi's reaction became like that." After saying that, Yuju didn't seem to want to talk about this matter anymore. Her black hole-like eyes shifted to Noah, and there was a clear displeasure in her eyes that anyone could see. "Why didn't you wake me up?" The sudden question made Noah blink his eyes. Then, he understood that Yuju was referring to seeing him sleeping. Just as Aozaki Aoko said, Yuju was also concerned about whether her sleeping posture would be seen by the opposite sex. Undoubtedly, she had never thought about love, yet she was obsessed with such strange things. Were all the people living in this mansion weird? Noah sighed in his heart, and said without hesitation, "If I woke you up, wouldn't you be angry?" Yuju was stunned, and then the displeasure in her eyes became even more intense. Just as Noah said, if Noah woke Yuju up directly, she would still be angry when she found out that her sleeping posture had been seen. "Since you'll be angry if I wake you up, if I don't wake you up, you might not know that I've seen your sleeping face and won't throw a tantrum. In that case, to avoid trouble, it's better to turn a blind eye." Noah waved his hand and walked towards the entrance. "After all, we're living together, so this kind of situation is inevitable. If you care, remember to sleep in your room next time. Just don't catch a cold." With that, Noah pushed open the door to the entrance, walked out, and disappeared from the mansion. The mansion returned to silence once again. The displeasure in Yuju's eyes disappeared little by little. She stood there like a statue, motionless. Chirp, chirp, chirp. At the same time, a little blue bird flew out of nowhere and landed on the railing of the stairs. It jumped up and down while letting out a pleasant chirp. That appearance actually gave people the feeling that it was clamoring for something. It was a blue robin. Yuju didn't seem surprised by this scene. She closed her eyes. What Yuju didn't tell Noah was that Aozaki Aoko was actually a little insensitive, or rather, she would sometimes go off the rails. Aozaki Aoko had a very strange view of people's likes and dislikes. No matter who she disliked or hated, as long as it wasn't necessary, Aozaki Aoko would forget all about them. She could even chat and drink tea with them the next day. On the other hand, people that Aozaki Aoko didn't dislike, including family members, friends, and even lovers, might cause Aozaki Aoko to alienate them for no reason. This was because Aozaki Aoko couldn't stand the existence of someone who could disturb her emotions. Therefore, Aozaki Aoko would treat such people as a special existence. They were enemies. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The blue robin flapped its wings in an exaggerated way, as if it was seriously protesting something. The dark-skinned girl seemed to understand the blue robin's words. Her cold and emotionless voice slowly echoed in the manor house. Indeed, maybe it was a wrong decision to let him live here. With that, Yuju turned around. But it's still within the acceptable range. Ignoring the messenger bird's dissatisfaction, Yuju walked towards her room with quiet steps. Sigh. On the way to school, Noah sighed as if he was tired. What's going on? To be honest, Noah didn't dislike Aozaki, Aoko and Yuju. From the memories he obtained from Gaia and Alea, Noah knew how crazy the magicians in this world were. He also knew that most of them could be described with one word: insane. However, Noah didn't find anything he hated about Aozaki, Aoko and Yuju. Even if it was Yuju, who lived her life as a magician, perhaps she would kill without mercy, but she would not kill for no reason. Therefore, Noah didn't think that Aozaki, Aoko and Yuju were difficult to get along with. At most, he had a headache because of their lifestyle and troublesome personalities. Otherwise, even if he was called an evil guest who occupied other people's territory, Noah wouldn't agree to live under the same roof as Aozaki, Aoko and Yuju. But now, Noah realized how naive his thoughts were. Aozaki, Aoko and Yuju, these two girls' personalities weren't troublesome, but extremely troublesome. Noah felt that his decision to live in the manor house was too hasty. Woof 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 woof. Just as Noah's thoughts were running wild, suddenly, a burst of chaotic barking sounded without any warning, attracting Noah's attention. Woof 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 woof. The chaotic barking of the dogs became clearer and clearer, accompanied by a series of even more chaotic footsteps. The footsteps approached Noah from afar. Noah narrowed his eyes and instantly activated his sensory ability. The magic sealed by the limit ability began to be released little by little, allowing abundant magic to flow through his body. Chapter 305. Woof. 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 The fierce barking of the dogs lingered in the surroundings like noise, frantically reverberating in the air above the asphalt road that was covered by the forest. The owners of these sounds were like fierce beasts that wanted to fight for their prey. In a burst of violent aura, they gradually approached their target. Noah calmly glanced around and swept his line of sight to the surrounding trees. He saw that in the forest that was still slightly dark, pairs of green eyes that were full of ferocity quietly appeared in the bushes, imprinting into Noah's eyes. They were stray dogs. Moreover, they were a group of starving dogs that did not have a single piece of fur on their bodies. They were shivering in the cold wind, but their mouths were open and dripping with saliva as they unswervingly surrounded Noah's position. The flashing green eyes did not look like they were looking at living creatures at all, but more like they were looking at food. Just like that, the pack of wild dogs gradually approached Noah with a sense of eagerness to launch an attack. They surrounded Noah, who was standing on the asphalt road of the ramp. Seeing this group of wild dogs, Noah was a little surprised, but also a little enlightened. There were indeed a lot of wild dogs in Sanyo City. Because they had nowhere to go, these wild dogs would generally gather in the wild or the forest, and even directly breed there. If it were not for the lack of food and the environment, which caused some wild dogs to die not long after being born, the forest in Sanyo City would have been filled with wild dogs long ago. In order to get food, these wild dogs would sometimes attack passers-by like wild beasts, and were an existence that the residents of Sanyo City hated. If Noah hadn't activated his sensing ability, he would have thought that these wild dogs were the survivors of the forest who were preparing to attack him. However, with his sensing ability fully activated, Noah could clearly feel that in the forest not far from the group of wild dogs, an extremely majestic aura was walking over here step by step. That aura more or less made Noah feel a trace of danger. Noah's eyes narrowed slightly. Ignoring the wild dogs that were gradually approaching, he looked forward with a burning gaze, closely staring in the direction of the aura that he had sensed. Not long after, a figure slowly appeared in the forest. Woo! At this moment, the surrounding wild dogs seemed to have encountered a terrifying enemy, or perhaps it was better to say that they were welcoming their leader. With a whimper, they abandoned the food in front of them without hesitation and retreated in unison. Da-da. The black shadow, on the other hand, walked out of the forest with powerful yet graceful steps, exposing itself to Noah's eyes. When he saw the full appearance of the person who came, Noah's eyes flickered uncontrollably, and even his heart skipped a beat. What appeared in front of Noah was a golden beast. It had the appearance of a wolf, but it was also more ferocious than a tiger. The fur on its body was the most dazzling, golden like the sun, and its eyes were emerald green like gemstones. However, there was no rationality in the golden wolf's excessively beautiful eyes. In fact, the moment it saw Noah, those emerald green eyes seemed to turn red, flashing with a bloody light. A sense of crisis that came out of nowhere made Noah's pupils shrink. Without any hesitation, he completely removed the limit ability, causing all of his strength to return to his body in an instant. Roar! Almost at the same time, the golden wolf let out an extremely beautiful and resounding roar. Its 4 limbs on the ground bent, causing the golden wolf to tense up like a spring. Dong! In the next moment, amidst the stomping sounds that caused even the atmosphere to tremble, the golden lone wolf turned into a meteor and tore through space. Like a sun that was rapidly moving forward, it carried a tremendous force as it charged out violently. Kacha-kacha! Wherever the golden meteor passed, the ground cracked inch by inch. Even the space seemed to be unable to bear the burden, producing sharp buzzing sounds like teeth grinding. Its power was terrifying to the extreme. Wang! The magical power in Noah's body completely erupted, like a violent flame, soaring into the sky. His body was suddenly covered in a white light, illuminating the entire surrounding space. Wang wang! Immediately, the white light that rose sharply was like a stream of air, converging on one of Noah's hands. Finally, it turned into a transparent halo, covering Noah's tightly clenched fist. Ha! In the midst of a cold shout, Noah faced the direction of the golden meteor, and heavily punched out his fist. In that instant, the true power of the super high-level destruction spell, Crush, finally broke out. Pung! In the midst of a thunderous muffled sound, the space in front of Noah actually directly shattered like glass, exploding into a pitch-black hole. Peng 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 peng. A series of muffled sounds rang out one after another. The space in front of Noah, as if it was cut open by a sword, was continuously shattered, outlining a pitch-black crack, spreading forward. In the blink of an eye, the pitch-black crack and the golden meteor suddenly collided together. Dong! In the midst of an earth-shattering sound, a circle of shock waves turned into a substantial halo, like the explosion of a star, suddenly spreading out. Pa! The ground formed by the asphalt road simply exploded, and without the slightest suspense, was razed to the ground. The surrounding trees were affected by the substantial halo of shock waves, as if they were directly annihilated, and one by one, they were smashed into wood dregs. Pung! In the midst of a muffled sound, the impact that turned into a halo ruthlessly hit Noah and the golden wolf, causing a hair-raising collision sound. Goo! Noah and the golden wolf let out a muffled groan at the same time, and their bodies were completely bounced out, like kites with a broken string. One slammed heavily on the ground, then turned over and stood up, while the other slammed into a tree, then slid down with all 4 limbs on the ground. Kneeling on the ground with one knee on the ground, Noah, who was covering his chest and feeling the bursts of pain from his chest, raised his face full of shock. In that blow just now, Noah really used his full strength. Even so, he couldn't gain the upper hand at all. What is the origin of the golden wolf? Compared with the somewhat shocked Noah, the golden wolf didn't seem to have enough wisdom to compete with human beings, nor did it have the slightest hesitation because of being repelled. Its 4 limbs tightened, and like a beast that only had eyes for its prey, it stared at Noah with a murderous light in its eyes. Realizing that now wasn't the time to be shocked, Noah immediately exerted his ability to control his emotions to the limit. He suppressed all the emotions in his heart, stood up, and the magical power in his body continuously rose. No matter what, the golden wolf in front of him had the power to match his full strength, and this was certain. Although he didn't know why this golden wolf appeared in Sanyi City, and why it attacked him, Noah knew that he had to fight with his life on the line. However, Noah, who was ready, suddenly narrowed his eyes again. Roar! The golden wolf let out a resounding and beautiful roar, and its whole body bloomed with golden light. And in this golden light, a soft white light entered Noah's vision. Noah clearly saw it. In the chest of the golden wolf, or rather in the body, in the center of the soft white light, a broken feather was suspended in the middle. Impressively, it was the world fragment. The world fragment was in the golden wolf's body. Buzz, 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 buzz. In the soft white light, the broken feather trembled and made an excited buzzing sound. Roar! In contrast to the world fragment, in its body, the golden wolf looked at Noah with even more ferocity, and its body surged with a fierce aura. Noah took a deep breath, calmly looked at the increasingly violent golden wolf, and slowly stretched out his hand. However, at this time, a suppressed angry voice sounded from the depths of the forest, and entered Noah and the golden wolf's ears. Bo! Come back! The golden wolf's roar came to an abrupt end. Who? Because Noah was highly focused, he didn't notice that someone had come to the scene, and immediately activated his sensing ability. Chapter 306. As previously mentioned, Noah's sensory ability was similar to intuition, but it was strengthened to the extreme, to the point of being like a scanner or even a radar. However, no matter how powerful it was, the essence of sensory ability was still intuition, and the like. Intuition and intuition could identify a person's aura, but there was no way to identify a person's appearance. Thus, under Noah's sensory ability, in the forest, an unfamiliar aura accompanied by a tall figure entered his range of sensory ability, imprinting itself into Noah's mind. It was unknown if the person discovered that he had been found, but his voice became more and more angry. Bo! Still not coming back? At the same time the voice reverberated, an exquisite geometric pattern flashed on the forehead of the lone golden wolf called Bo, causing the golden wolf to let out a dissatisfied growl. In the next second, the golden wolf's figure turned into a golden stream of light, flying into the depths of the forest. In a moment, it arrived at the side of the person in the forest, carried him on its back, and broke through the air. Noah reacted as soon as the golden wolf's figure moved. But in that instant, the golden wolf flew to the side of the person who had suddenly spoken, carried him on its back, and once again turned into a golden stream of light, flying into the depths of the forest at an extremely fast speed. In less than a second, the golden wolf had completely disappeared from Noah's field of vision, leaving Noah no time to chase after it. Its speed was extremely fast. But in terms of speed, if Noah did not use leap, he would not be able to compare to the golden wolf. A golden wolf with a world fragment in its body. Where did it come from? Noah, with an unprecedentedly serious attitude, began to search for the memories of this world that had been instilled into him by Gaia and Aleia. Not long after, a term appeared in Noah's mind. Could it be, that's a magical beast? Just like how magicians existed among humans, some creatures that only existed in fantasy and legends also existed among beasts. Some of them came from the ecosystem, some were born from the imagination of humans, some became powerful individuals due to longevity, and some came from the evolution of nature. This type of creature that had broken away from the category of wild beasts and possessed great power was known as the magical beast. For example, demi-human fairies, giants, ghosts, dragons, and other creatures were such existences. And among these magical beasts, there was a race of werewolves. However, there was no such thing as golden hair among the werewolves. The silver werewolves were the leaders of the werewolves. They were the most powerful existences among the werewolves. Without a doubt, the golden wolf was superior to the silver wolf. In other words, it is an existence that surpasses magical beasts. Noah lowered his head and muttered. I see. Is it a fantasy breed? The existence that surpassed wild beasts was known as the magical beast. The existence that surpassed the magical beast was the illusory beast. It was also known as the fantasy breed. It was said that above the illusory beast, there was a type of divine beast that only existed in myths. However, that kind of existence was already comparable to the gods themselves. It was almost impossible for them to appear in this era where there were no gods. Therefore, Noah was certain that the golden wolf was a legendary fantasy breed. Moreover, because of the world fragment, the golden wolf seemed to have been affected in some way, faintly surpassing the category of a fantasy breed. Otherwise, even if the golden wolf was a fantasy breed, it was unlikely for it to have that kind of power. Even Noah could fight evenly with it at full strength. Noah did not think that an ordinary fantasy breed could achieve this kind of power. Raising his head and looking in the direction where the golden wolf disappeared, Noah could not help but laugh bitterly. Things seemed to have become a little troublesome. After saying that, Noah sorted out his emotions and turned around as if he had sensed something. He looked behind him. There, Yu Zhu, who was dressed in black, was rushing over with somewhat hurried footsteps. When Yu Zhu arrived at the scene in front of her made her black hole-like eyes reveal a shocked expression. The ramp that was originally paved with asphalt seemed to have been raised to the ground, exposing the charred earth. The surrounding forest seemed to have been bitten by something, and a large piece of it was missing on both sides. The guardrail of the asphalt road had long disappeared. The broken wood of the trees was scattered all over the ground. Some of the green leaves had turned yellow, and some had become charred, as if they had been burned overnight by a fire. It was especially miserable. What shocked Yu Zhu the most was the magical aura that still filled the air. The magical aura that made one's heart palpitate like a volcano that had just erupted caused Yu Zhu's heartbeat to involuntarily speed up. When she noticed that the exact same magical aura was surging on Noah's body, how could Yu Zhu not understand who had caused all of this? Fortunately, Yu Zhu had arrived late and was not able to see the space that had been directly broken by Noah's full-strength crush. Otherwise, it was easy to imagine how shocked Yu Zhu would be. Looking at Noah standing in the middle of the charred earth ramp, Yu Zhu slightly clenched her small fists and walked step by step to Noah's side. Her voice was extremely grave. What exactly happened? From Yu Zhu's tone, Noah could tell that she attached great importance to this matter. Therefore, Noah did not need to ask. He could even guess that if he hid this matter, Yu Zhu would definitely not trust him again. Of course, Noah did not intend to hide it. There was nothing to hide about this matter. As you can see, I was attacked. Noah sighed. Moreover, it was not an ordinary attack. Yu Zhu did not speak. She just looked at Noah and quietly waited for Noah's explanation. Noah turned around and faced Yu Zhu. Fantasy breed. If I'm not wrong, this is the attacker. Moreover, behind this fantasy breed, there seems to be a magician controlling it. What did you say? Yu Zhu's pretty face finally changed uncontrollably. Fantasy breed. This term might be just a simple taboo to a layman. But to a magician like Yu Zhu, it was a miracle that absolutely could not be ignored. Yes. A miracle. Fantasy breed itself was an existence that could be directly linked to the terms mysterious and miraculous. For a fantasy breed whose existence itself was mysterious, its existence alone was above magic. In this world, the mysterious would be defeated by an even more powerful mystery. Compared to a fantasy breed, the mystery of magic seemed weak. That level of mystery was nothing to a fantasy breed that existed in fantasy and legends. Therefore, magic could not be compared to a fantasy breed. No matter how strong the magic was, there was no way to leave any damage on a fantasy breed. For a magician, a fantasy breed was a natural enemy. There are fantasy breeds in Sanyi City. And there are magicians who can control fantasy breeds. Yu Zhu seemed to want to deny this, but in the end, she chose to remain silent. Noah knew that Yu Zhu was starting to find it difficult to back down. As the manager of Sanyi City's spirit vein, how could Yu Zhu ignore the appearance of a fantasy breed and a magician who could control fantasy breeds in her territory? After all, fantasy breeds were the natural enemies of magicians. As long as it was a magician, it was absolutely impossible to defeat a fantasy breed. It was not that she looked down on magicians, but it was just like a cat eating a mouse. Fantasy breeds were the bane of magicians, and there was no other way. If Noah, who had Avalon, made Yuju helpless, then a magician with a fantasy breed was a real threat. Poor Yuju. She had just solved Noah's problem, but now she had to worry about a fantasy breed and a magician who could control fantasy breeds. Let's leave this place first. Noah interrupted Yuju's silence. The commotion just now was too big. The residents of Hakunushi and even Sanyi City must have noticed it. It will be troublesome if someone comes up later. Yuju immediately looked around. After hesitating for a moment, she walked forward. Why don't you come with me? Go. Noah was stunned. Go where? Yuju did not turn around and directly threw out two words. The church. As for the reason, it was probably because the Juyuanji group was not a magic family, but an ordinary chaebol. Yoju's father was an ordinary person. Yoju's mother was a pure-blooded witch. Therefore, Yuju was born with an excellent magician bloodline. This was Juyuanji Yuju. It has indeed been a while, Sister Zhou say Weijia. Yuju said to Sister Weijia Zhou with an emotionless tone. Moreover, she didn't beat around the bush at all as she spoke of her intentions. I have something to ask Father Yongli. Father Yongli is in the church. Zhou say Weijia's voice sounded a bit cold. Her eyes were still closed, but she turned her head and faced Noah. However, Miss Juyuan Temple, do you want to bring this person in as well? From Zhou say Weijia's voice, Noah could hear a sense of coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away. And this coldness became a lot stronger after Yuju revealed Noah's identity. Don't worry, he is related. It's just that the technique of hiding his magical power is beyond our imagination. Qingzi and I didn't discover the magical power in his body with the help of the barrier. Yuju said. However, Sister Weijia should be able to sense it, right? This sentence made Noah pause, and at the same time, it also made Zhou say Weijia frown and nod. Indeed, there is a feeling of power flowing through his body. After saying this, Zhou say Weijia stepped aside and walked away without looking back. She didn't even say goodbye. She was extremely cold. Yuju didn't seem to be surprised at all. She lifted her feet and walked into the church. Noah, who was following behind Yuju, curiously asked. How could that sister feel the magical power in my body? My magic power is obviously hidden again, isn't it? After the battle was over, Noah once again used his limit ability to seal all the power in his body. Therefore, logically speaking, other people shouldn't be able to sense the magical power in Noah's body. But Yuju's answer made Noah a bit surprised. Sister Weijia has a congenital amblyopia and is now completely blind. But because of this, she has very powerful senses. If someone approaches her, she will definitely discover it. Yuju replied. Even if you have concealed your magical power, as long as there is magical power flowing through your body, Sister Weijia will be able to sense it. In addition, Sister Weijia is a member of the Holy Church. She is very sensitive to the magical power of heretical magicians. You won't be able to hide it from her. Yuju's words made Noah surprised. She has very powerful senses. She can even sense magical power flowing through someone's body. Isn't that very similar to Noah's perception ability? He didn't think that there would be a sister in the Holy Church who had a similar ability to Noah's perception ability. This really made Noah surprised. However, Noah also understood Zhou say Weijia's coldness. No wonder her attitude was so bad. If Zhou say Weijia was a member of the Holy Church, then it wouldn't be hard to explain. The church in the morning was especially desolate. Just like the mansion, the church didn't have a heater. The cold air filled the seemingly cold church, making people want to turn around and leave. And in this church, in front of the cross, a tall figure stood there. It was a man wearing a cloak-like coat. Wen Bingyongli, also a member of the Holy Church. But he is different from Sister Weijia. He is neutral. Normally, he represents the Holy Church to communicate with us. Yu Zhu said softly, but her gaze was very strict. His duty is to monitor us, but he also has the duty of assisting the manager of Sanyi City's spirit vein. Our target this time is him. After saying this, Yu Zhu seemed to have realized something and closed her mouth. This was because when Noah and Wen Bingyongli walked into the church, their gazes suddenly met without any warning. Moreover, one frowned, while the other opened his eyes wide in shock. Immediately after, his eyes flashed with sharpness for a moment before returning to normal. Then, the priest named Wen Bingyongli had a calm smile on his face as he walked towards the door step by step. Da. As Wen Bingyongli approached, a suffocating and unpleasant feeling suddenly appeared in the air. It was killing intent. True killing intent. Moreover, it was faintly discernible killing intent rising from the seemingly harmless priest. What did this mean? It meant that not only did Wen Bingyongli kill someone, but he also wanted to kill someone. And the target of Wen Bingyongli's killing intent was Noah. It was because he felt Wen Bingyongli's killing intent that Noah frowned. What was going on? Although he couldn't understand it, it didn't stop Noah from reacting. Without any intention of releasing his power again, Noah quietly looked at Wen Bingyongli, who was gradually approaching him. A trace of mockery appeared in his deep, dark eyes. At this moment, Wen Bingyongli stopped in his tracks and frowned. Then, he smiled and looked at Noah with interest. Interesting, I didn't expect to meet such an interesting guest. Yu Zhu, who felt that something was wrong, muttered to herself for a while, then chose to stand aside and watch. Noah looked straight at Wen Bingyongli and smiled, but there wasn't much of a smile in his smile. I also think it's interesting. It's one thing for a priest to have such a strong killing intent, but he also wants to kill someone he just met for the first time for no reason. It's really interesting. There's still a reason. The priest said with a sincere smile. I just want to see if I can kill him. Chapter 308. I just wanted to see if I could kill you. His words made the temperature in the room drop to freezing point. What was more frightening was that Wen Bingyongli did not sound like he was joking. Instead, he sounded very serious. This made Noah calm down instead, and he asked unhurriedly. You mean to say that your so-called reason is just to see if you can kill me? I can't help it, because you're a very interesting person. Wen Bingyongli looked straight at Noah and said calmly. When I saw you, I had a feeling that I wanted to kill you. I can feel that you're in a very weak state compared to your current strength. My intuition told me that if I wanted to kill you, if I couldn't succeed in your current state, it would be impossible for me to succeed. This made me want to see if I could do it. Unfortunately, you found out my intention, Wen Bingyongli said in a regretful tone. This made me feel that I couldn't kill you even if I made a move. Instead, the person who would die would be me, so I gave up. Hearing Wen Bingyongli's words, even Yu Zhu, who was watching from the side, felt a chill in her heart. What did Wen Bingyongli mean? What he meant was that he could feel that Noah was in a very weak state compared to his current strength, which was the best state to deal with. It was because of this that Wen Bingyongli became interested in Noah. He wanted to try and see if he could kill the other party once. That was the reason. There was no clear reason. There was no clear hostility. There was no reason for him to do so, nor was there any reason for him to do so. However, Wen Bingyongli wanted to have a try, so he wanted to hurt Noah. Moreover, he wanted to kill Noah. This person was simply a lunatic. Noah's eyes started to turn cold. In other words, if I also want to try and see if I can kill you, then I can do it, right? Then please allow me to beg for mercy, Wen Bingyongli shrugged and said in a half-joking and half-serious tone. Although this is not something worth mentioning for a priest, I have an extraordinary sensitivity to killing. I can feel that you're the best person to kill, and I can also feel that I can't kill you. Naturally, I can also feel that if you want to kill me, I won't be able to live." As he said this, Wen Bingyongli raised his hands as if he was surrendering, indicating that he would not resist. He sincerely wanted to beg for mercy so that Noah could not find an excuse to fight back. Then, Noah glanced at Wen Bingyongli. "You're really not an ordinary kind of hateful guy." "Really?" Wen Bingyongli laughed bitterly. "This is the first time someone has said that to me." "Yuzhu, you talk to him yourself." Noah turned around and walked out of the church without looking back. "I'll wait for you outside." Yuzhu did not nod or shake her head. After Noah walked out, she opened her red lips and started to talk with Wen Bingyongli. After walking out of the church, Noah came to the side of the gate. He leaned against the wall and rubbed his forehead as if he had a headache. The people in the church were really indescribable. Zhou Seiweijia, who had a sensing ability similar to Noah's. Wen Bingyongli, who did not have any restrictions on killing. Although the two of them should not be able to compare to Noah in terms of strength, it also proved that the world was big and there were all kinds of strange things, and that all kinds of people existed. At least, the memories obtained from Gaia and Alea told Noah. In this world, Noah was not the only special one. With Zhou Seiweijia, who had a sensing ability similar to Noah's, it was possible for another existence with 3 special constitutions like Noah to appear at any time. Life forms that were even more special than fantasy breeds existed. Therefore, in this world, compared to those truly special existences, Noah was not that special. Of course, from this world's point of view, Noah, who had seen Gaia and Alea, received gifts from Gaia and Alea, and might even have reached the origin, was already special enough. Then, Noah began to consider the matter of the golden wolf. Noah only had one goal in coming to this world, the world fragment. Therefore, the fantasy breed that had the world fragment in its body and seemed to be affected by the world fragment had to be found. Although he did not know why a magician could control a fantasy breed with a world fragment in its body, the other party should still be in Sanio City. As long as it was in Sanio City, the matter would not be troublesome. What Noah was most afraid of was that the other party would directly escape with the golden wolf. If that happened, he would not know when he would be able to find the world fragment. In addition, the golden wolf had strength comparable to Noah. This time, there might be a tough battle to fight. Gag. Just as Noah was thinking about what to do next, the sound of the church's metal door opening and closing was heard. Yuzhu walked out of the church. Behind her, the church's door closed as if it had completed its mission. Finally, with a dong sound, it was tightly shut. Looking at Yuzhu's doll-like pretty face that lacked emotion, Noah spread his hands. Was the negotiation successful? It's not considered a negotiation. Yuzhu shook her head gently. The church doesn't want the battle between magicians to affect ordinary people, so Father Yongli will be responsible for suppressing the various effects of your battle with the fantasy breed. After saying that, Yuzhu glanced at Noah. Next, I hope you can tell me what happened. Hearing this, Noah looked at Yuzhu's expressionless face and could not help but sigh in his heart. Strictly speaking, Yuzhu had come to the church this time entirely to help Noah deal with the aftermath. After all, Noah was the one who had fought with the golden wolf. The person who had caused such a huge commotion and could possibly cause a commotion was also Noah. Although Yuzhu was the manager of Sanio City's spirit vein and a magician, it was natural for her to abide by the duty of concealing the traces of magic. Thus, she took great pains to help Noah deal with the aftermath. However, help was help. Even if Noah himself did not care about the concealment of magic, he could not deny it. Here, it could be said that he owed Yuzhu a favor. Let's talk about it when we get back. Noah patted Yuzhu's little head. I owe you this time. After saying that, Noah walked forward in a carefree manner. Yuzhu stood in the same spot as she stared blankly at Noah's back. She raised her hand and rubbed the spot where Noah had just patted her little head. Soon after, she furrowed her brows tightly. Other than her father, there had never been a member of the opposite sex who had patted Yuju's head like Noah had. At night, in the sunroom of the manor. In other words, not only does Sanyo City have a fantasy breed that breaks the rules, but there is also a magician who seems to be able to control this fantasy breed. The worst thing is that the other party may also have their eyes on Sanyo City's spirit vein. We have to be prepared to fight with the other party, right? Aoko Aozaki looked sharply at Noah and Yuju, who were sitting at the same table as her. After a while, she held her forehead as if she had given up and looked hatefully at Noah. Is this your revenge on me? Aoko Aozaki was referring to her sudden outburst in the morning for no reason. I can't be bothered with the student union president's willfulness. Also, don't make it sound like I deliberately provoked this kind of enemy. I was the one who was attacked, and I was also confused, okay? Noah rolled his eyes and put the cup of black tea in his hand on the table. Although I'm still not sure if the magician who can control the fantasy breed has his eyes on Sanyo City's spirit vein, since the other party is a magician, Sanyo City's barrier must have detected the other party's existence. I hope you can provide me with information in this regard. Provide you with information? Aoko Aozaki and Yuju froze at the same time. Don't be in a hurry to refuse. I know you are still wary of me, but I want to tell you that you are magicians, and fantasy breeds are the natural enemies of magicians. With your strength, you can't deal with a fantasy breed at all. Noah crossed his arms, and his voice echoed clearly. If you provide me with information, I will help you deal with that fantasy breed. Chapter 309. In the sunroom, Aoko Aozaki and Yuju stared at Noah in a daze, unable to react for a moment. This was because there were two key points in Noah's words. The first was that Noah had promised to deal with fantasy breeds. They were fantasy breeds, the ultimate mystery that only existed in fantasy and legends. Disregarding the magic principle of, the mystery will be defeated by an even more powerful mystery, fantasy breeds were also extremely powerful existences. Otherwise, how could they only exist in fantasy and legends? At the very least, Aoko Aozaki and Yuju did not think that humans could deal with such monsters. Even if they were mages who could use magic to deal with them, they believed that there was a high chance that they would fail. Of course, Aoko Aozaki and Yuju did not know that the Golden Wolf's power had already surpassed that of ordinary fantasy breeds under the inexplicable influence of the world fragment. It might even exceed the category of fantasy breeds. Otherwise, they would be even more desperate. Aoko Aozaki and Yuju could not ignore the other key point in Noah's words. You're magicians? Aoko Aozaki raised her eyebrows. What do you mean? Are you saying that you're not a magician? Yuju also recalled the night when she first met Noah and fought with him. At that time, Noah also denied that he was a magician. Could it be that Noah is really not a magician? With this thought in mind, Yuju suddenly realized that apart from the magic power flowing in his body, Noah had not used magic even once. On the night of the attack by the man with the fissure, Noah had used a power that could shatter the other party's bones. However, Yuju could not be sure whether it was magic or not. As for why Noah had magic power in his body, that was even easier to explain. In this world, magicians were not the only ones who could create magic power. In fact, magic power was life force. As long as there was a way to convert it, then anyone could convert life force into magic power. It was just a matter of how much one could convert. Under such circumstances, Noah sighed. You guys really like to think that what you think is the truth. In the beginning, you took me as a foreign magician who wanted to seize the spirit vein in Sanyi City without permission. Now, you take me as a magician without permission. I have never once said that I am a magician. Are you really not a magician? Aoko couldn't help but ask. Then what are you? Noah shrugged his shoulders and did not answer the question. Instead, he turned to look at Yuju, who was staring at him, and asked in return. Yuju, did you see the scene where I fought with the Golden Wolf today? Yuju couldn't help but recall the scene where it was as if a volcano had erupted. She nodded. I only exchanged a single blow with that Golden Wolf, but it was a draw. This should be enough to prove that I have the ability to deal with it, Noah said calmly. In addition, I also have Avalon. Do you guys still doubt that I can't deal with that golden wolf? After Noah said this, Aoko and Yuju finally remembered this matter. That was right. Even if the fantasy breed was considered a foul, the Avalon was also an extremely foul existence. Avalon was able to exclude all physical obstacles. Even in the face of magic, it would still be able to protect Noah from it. This way, even if the opponent was a fantasy breed, Noah would not have any problems. Moreover, Avalon also had a healing function. No matter how much damage Noah suffered, as long as there was enough magic power, Avalon would continuously provide healing and let Noah recover to his original state. Therefore, Avalon could be called a mobile stronghold. That was why Avalon was known as the strongest guardian. With Avalon, even if Noah could not defeat a fantasy breed, he could put himself in an invincible position. After understanding this, Aoko and Yuju looked at each other. Yuju. Aoko's expression was full of seriousness. What do you think? Yuju muttered to herself. After a while, she raised her eyes and looked at Noah. Why do you want to help us? This was Yuju's only question. Logically speaking, Noah should have no reason to help. Unless Noah had his own reasons. There's nothing to hide. Noah tapped the table in front of him with his fingers and then sighed slightly. Didn't I say before that I stayed in Myo City because there was something I wanted to find? Upon hearing this, Aoko and Yuju immediately understood what was going on. Just as you guessed, the thing I want to find is on that fantasy breed. Noah curled his lips and smiled. We have the same goal, so there's a need for us to cooperate, right? You're wrong. Aoko glanced at Noah. We haven't confirmed that the other party will attack Myo City's spirit vein. Perhaps they are like you. You have your eyes on them, and they have their eyes on you. Otherwise, why would they attack you? If the other party has no intention of attacking Myo City's spirit vein, then there's no need for us to help you, Yuju said faintly. Similarly, there's no need to provide you with information. Oh. Noah silently curled up the corner of his mouth. In other words, you'd rather let a fantasy breed and a magician with unknown motives lurk in Myo City and plant dangers that could explode at any time than provide me with information? Aoko and Yuju raised their eyebrows at the same time and remained silent. For you, investigating the other party's location is just a piece of cake, and there are no disadvantages. Furthermore, we can't rule out the possibility that the other party has no intention of attacking Myo City's spirit vein, Noah said, pressing on step by step. Wouldn't it be better for me to deal with that fantasy breed and help you eliminate the hidden dangers? The sunroom immediately fell into silence. I understand, Aoko sighed slightly and said to Noah with a serious expression, we'll provide the other party's location. In exchange, if the magician behind the scenes really intends to attack Myo City's spirit vein, you have to be responsible for dealing with that fantasy breed. No problem. Noah readily agreed. At the same time, Yuju extended her hand and extended a fair and slender finger. She gently tapped the table before her. Plop. Suddenly, the table in front of Noah, Aoko, and Yuju seemed to have assimilated into the surface of the water, and a circle of ripples appeared amidst the sound of water. A thick fog suddenly rose, and a mirror slowly emerged from the fog. On the mirror, the image of a city gradually appeared. That was Myo City. Next, Yuju began to use Myo City's barrier to conduct a comprehensive investigation of the entire city. The target of the investigation was naturally an individual with magic power. However, after half an hour of work, Aoko and Yuju were still unable to discover any signs of a foreign magician in Myo City. After waiting quietly for about half an hour, Noah finally sighed softly. It seems that we can't find him. Like you, the other party has some kind of technique that can hide the existence of magic power. Yuju closed her eyes, and her quiet voice echoed. Things are a bit strange. Strange? A trace of confusion appeared on Noah's face. You still don't know, right? Aoko gritted her teeth and said this sentence. In the past month, we haven't been able to detect the existence of magic power. Other than you, there are also foreign magicians that you know about. Including this magician who can control a fantasy breed this time, there are 3 beings that we can't detect magic power this month. Yuju's expression became solemn. This is something that has never happened before, but it has happened 3 times in a row this month. Could it be that there's a problem with the barrier? 3 times? Noah scratched his cheek. Why are you so sure that it's 3 times? Noah's words made Aoko and Yoju's hearts tremble. Yes? Why are you so sure that it's 3 times? Aoko's gaze gradually became sinister. The foreign magician and the magician who can control a fantasy breed might be one and the same. Yuju lowered her head and fell silent. Noah cast his gaze outside the courtyard, and his eyes flickered slightly. This matter is indeed very troublesome. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.